Hey, Gerard. Let me make sure I'm muted. How to do, friends? I gotta say, Jasmine, that is one gorgeous photo of you. And Akira, woo, y'all just take pretty pictures. Kathy, now Maureen, you had a beautiful picture on earlier.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
look at Sally, looking all fashionista there.
Picture look beautiful. Yes.
Mhm. Well, your instructor today is a good friend of mine, and we are both Tar Heels. And our firstborn children both became Tar Heels the same year. It was so ironic. We were standing in line together at orientation the summer before they matriculated, and we're like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? So that was fun. So Kelby, unmute yourself and let's chat a minute. I prepared, and I may have mentioned this or not, but I prepared there is a Rawls Group Virtual Ignite YouTube channel where I post all the YouTubes, and somehow I missed one, but
I've already been there to catch up, and I was kind of confused. Some of ours were missing, but I think it hadn't been uploaded yet, maybe. But I watched some of the ones from December, which should be just as good, right?
absolutely. And the reason, what I have to do, I have to these are 3-hour classes. I have to download them from the Zoom cloud. Then I upload them to YouTube, and it's a multi-hour process.
Yeah, it takes a long time, I know.
Ugh. So, let's see. I'm not positive that number 9 is up, but I should be now caught up. I'll make sure 9 is done. And I just, so I'm always, probably 2 days at least behind, just because it's such a laborious process. Not for me, it's a laborious for YouTube. But anyway, it's Rawls Group Virtual Ignite. I'll write it in the chat. So you just go to
Found a
YouTube.
lot of other.
Search.
There were a lot of good videos on that website.
I'm so glad I put every single one there just for y'all. And so y'all just subscribe, and you can go back, because I do have it from a class back in the summer, and then the
There's
class
one
in
in December.
December.
Yeah.
And those are all, now I have to admit, I think in the summer, for some reason, one video went missing, but otherwise, it's pretty complete. And ooh, everybody's just jumping on. This is great. Great. I hope Diane comes to the party. She is, oh, hello. I see Olga joining us.
Hello.
Hi, hon. Good to see you. And you have a pretty picture too. Diane, before she became an agent, was a virtual assistant, and so honey, she's got contract to close down pat. She knows all the things you can do. So what she's going to share today is even more detailed and helpful than what the chapter in the Ignite book shares with you. She's got it all, and she even has some tracking sheets, cheat sheets. I'll try to extract out of her all her goodies so I can share with you. I know one of the ones, there is a website that you want to bookmark. I'll share it with you, where when you, okay, we've got 7 days due diligence. You put in the binding agreement date, you put in the number 7, and boom, it tells you what's going to be your last day of due diligence, so that you can mark it on your calendar and not miss it. Ooh-wee, that's a handy little device, resource. All righty, look at this. We are very close. Hey, Delana.
Hello.
Hi, very close to starting, except for no Diane, which means she is scrambling. Let's see. Whoops. Oh, she's calling me. Hi, hun. You don't need to be allowed in the class. I mean, everybody else is here. It's saying you have to be let in.
Well, hello, everybody.
And here she comes. She will reveal herself. She was teaching a class on Google Meet. But there she is.
It's saying start video. Let's see. Sorry, everybody. I've been waiting to be invited into this class for the last 10 minutes.
Oh,
welcome.
yeah.
It's saying. Okay, let me back out and try it again.
Okay.
Well, I don't know quite why it's not letting me in.
All right. Well, in the meantime, let's take our pretty picture. Hey, Justin. Oh, there we go. Can we see you just for the purposes of the picture? You're all blacked out. Ah, there we go. Yeah, you guys, when you're on a Zoom, it's really helpful to not have a window behind you because that glare keeps us from being able to see you. So everybody's scrambling around. All righty. So let's just do this.
I'm gonna try something else. Hold on a second.
Okay, well, we're just taking pictures.
I think it's taking.
All right, everybody say cheese, cheese. Let's see if this works. Well, no, that didn't work. Okay. Weird. Yep.
There.
Hello.
Well, this
This
didn't
is my
start off very
friend-
well, did it, everybody?
This is my
I'm so
friend
sorry
Diane
I'm so sorry to keep you guys waiting.
I've already told them you're Tar Heel and their sons. we're in the same class, and that's
Oh
all.
my goodness, you gave them a lot more information than they needed.
The tie that binds. All right.
Okay, just 15-second bio so you kind of know who you're dealing with. I've been at Keller Williams for about 14 years now, and combination of being an agent, doing operations for several of the top teams here. Currently, I'm the operations manager for Cynthia Pierce's team, and I also do back office for another agent, Jana Hupham, which y'all may be familiar with. So I've been working with systems for a while now, in all different permutations of top producer, wise agent, command, just about anything you can think of that's come down the pike in the last 15 years. And the thing about this class that I like is that it really does pull everything together with everything you've been learning up to this point. Some of this stuff is kind of hard to really imagine putting into practice unless you actually have a experience with doing closings. How many of you, just quick show of hands here, how many of you have been through a closing already? Hands? Oops, okay. Okay, so not very many. Okay, that's good. Some of this is not going to, it'll make sense to you while we're talking about it, but for me to expect you to remember every detail is going to be probably a little challenging because there are a lot of details in a closing. The number one question I always get from newer agents is, should I get a contract to close person? Right? Yes. I personally feel that as an agent, you're responsible for every step of the way. A transaction coordinator or a contract to close person, whatever they call themselves, is very helpful when you are juggling several different clients, several different contracts. Once you get past 3 or 4, you can't keep them in your head. As much as you try, you can't do it. So you need to have a system, and the system keeps you on track and keeps you on deadline. So if anything else that you have done up to this point really hasn't been deadline driven as much as a contract to close, because in a contract, you live and die by your deadlines. So one of the things that I want to kind of go over today is the fact that a closing isn't just an hour that you spend at the attorney's table, at the end of the thing where you get your check and you walk away happy. It's really, it's about a 3 to 6 week process, and every step of the way you are setting the expectations for your client, not only for closings but also going forward. A good closing leaves a very nice taste in your client's mouth. They're more likely to recommend you. They're more likely to be receptive to giving you referrals. There's somebody that you can count on moving forward to be a source of referrals and a source of income. Repeat business. All that happens, as unfair as it sounds, all that happens at the closing table, because you might have, shown them for a year trying to find a house. You may have won a multiple, offer contract. But if the closing process is messy and they don't feel like you have control over it, all that work has just gone out that window. So that's kind of where I'm headed on this, to get you in the mindset that this is an entire process that has to be managed, and it has to be managed professionally, and it has to be managed in a way that sets the expectations for not only your buyers, but also for the other co-op agent and everybody else in the process. So one of the things that we're doing is, I don't know if I can share this. Let's see if I can share this.
So Diane, did you answer the question? Do you think it is that we as new agents need to, that we should go through that process versus having someone else do it for us?
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I did.
No,
I
you
mentioned
didn't.
it. I personally think that you have to go through it yourself, at least, 3 or 4 times. You have to know the process before you entrust it to somebody else. You know, the old saying, trust but verify. You have to know what's going on. You have to know where the pitfalls are. You have to know, I mean, you may have an assistant that sets up a great calendar, but if they're not following it, I mean, you're kind of out, hanging out in left field when the appraisal deadline has come and gone, and then you get your appraisal and find out that, oops, appraisal's under and I'm past deadline. I can't do anything about it. So, I mean, it all falls back on you. So I feel like you at least should go through it, 3 or 4 times just to be able to get your hands dirty and be able to see what the steps are and see the kind of conversations that your contract to close person may end up having, with your clients, with your lender, with your closing attorney. All those are very important with setting the expectations moving forward. So yes, I do think you should. When you start getting, more than like one deal at a time, I would certainly consider leveraging yourself because, a lot of people think, well, this isn't the best use of my time. Well, if it doesn't close, it is. So, and you're responsible for it closing. So once you have, set those expectations and, hire a, contract to close person or hire a, transaction coordination that will be able to, keep everybody informed, keep you up to date, say, hey, this deadline's coming up in 2 days, just making you aware of it, that sort of thing. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So anyway, let me see if I can share this with you here. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at today are going to be closing on time, a smooth process, and win future business. Closing on time, that happens probably about 95% of the time. Sometimes there's always a delay, either lender couldn't get it together at the last minute or title issues popped up unexpectedly. But the deal is to get it to the closing table on time, because people have lined up movers, they've lined up, their financing, their interest rate may be expiring, their lock may be expiring. But mostly, people have, lined up movers, and especially these days when everybody's moving left and right, movers are slammed. And if you're trying to close at the end of the month, postponing it can really, play a number on being able to get a mover, being able to even reschedule it. I mean, if they don't have room on the calendar, then they can't, be in a position where they can fund it, that day. So that's one of the things that they are, we're trying to get it on time. Smooth process. Ideally, this should look, act like a duck, paddle like crazy underneath, but keep it smooth on top. This is where your professionalism comes through. There's a lot of questions during a closing process. Inspections, surveys, title issues, lending issues, all these things come into play and they all funnel through you. And when they do, that you have to understand the process and you have to be able to explain it to your client in such a way that they feel confident that things are being handled. And of course, the whole idea is, after all this is over, this is a way for you to win future business. Always like this quote. First part of the real estate sales process is the hard, focused work of making connections. The second part is keeping it together until closing. A lot of I'm always surprised at agents who feel like once they've got a contract, they kind of done their job, because as far as I'm concerned, everything going up to the contract, once you get to the contract, that's when the really hard work starts, because you have up until then, you've only been dealing with a client looking at a house, or with a seller trying to sell a house. At that point, you're only dealing one-on-one with individual agents, individual buyers or sellers. At this point, you start to have an entire universe of people who are clamoring for your attention and clamoring for the attention of your buyer. Let me get this bigger here. Y'all can't even read that, can you? It's very small. Just a second.
Are you able to put it in slideshow?
I'm trying to get up there, but there's so many menus up here.
Hey, Diane, you have to click enable editing,
Okay, hold on. Thank you.
and then at the bottom, you should be able to change it to a slideshow.
I can't get to it because of I can't get to that menu because of the. There we go. Let's just knock through this real quick. Okay, that's better. Thank you. This is kind of a graph that kind of shows things where things have been going. You've all kind of gone through the offer process of writing a contract, making an offer, right? That was one of the previous classes. Yes, no, thank you. Okay. Once you've gotten through that, you've basically got three outcomes. Either you get rejected, you get accepted, or you get a counter offer. Eventually, hopefully, you'll get to the point where everybody is an accepted contract. At that point, we have several deadlines that come into place. Everybody know what the binding agreement date is? Binding agreement date is when everyone agrees on the final terms of the contract. It should be like written on the last page of the purchase and sale agreement on the bottom, a binding agreement. That binding agreement starts the clock on every single one of your deadlines. It sets the clock for your due diligence. It sets the clock for your loan approval. It sets the clock for your appraisal. There's a lot of things that fall into this, but that binding agreement date, if you all don't have a calendar that you work with regularly, may I suggest that after this class, you go out and get one, or else start using your Google Calendar or your iCloud calendar or whatever calendar that you look at on a regular basis. I have to admit, I'm probably looking at my calendar probably a dozen times a day. I'm putting things in it. I'm moving things. It's the first thing I check in the morning to make sure that I know what's coming up. It's probably the last thing I check at night, just so I know that I'm not what I've got to do the next day. I know I have deadlines. I know I have inspections. I know I have photography for listings. I know I have binding agreement dates with lenders. These are all things that you kind of live and die by. So if you don't have a calendar, I mean, even get just a little paper calendar, from the office supply store, and keep that, do it in pencil because you're gonna be changing it a lot. But find a way to, the minute you get a contract and it's a binding, go through it and note every single deadline in that contract on your calendar. Note the due diligence, note the loan, note everything that's on there. Everything that has a deadline, put it in there. Put the closing. I tend to write the closing in pencil, because you really don't have a time for the closing at that point. but you know, every single deadline has, you know, should be recorded, and it's something that you should look at. Don't go out and buy this fancy calendar that, you know, it has all these bells and whistles. That's going to take you 6 minutes to put something in. Keep it simple, make it something that you will actually use. I can't tell you how many calendars I have gone through in my life where I have spent $1 zillion on a really pretty leather bound calendar and everything, and, you know, used it for about 6 weeks, and yeah. So I live and die by my Google Calendar. So once you've gotten the acceptance, and once you've gotten your binding date, and once you've kind of figured out, you know, who's on first when, then you're probably going to be moving into what we call the inspection phase. Inspection phase in Georgia, of course, we call it due diligence. Georgia's kind of fun because Georgia has probably one of the loosest due diligence periods, you know, in the country. Basically, if a buyer decides, oh, you know, I don't like the color of the shutters, you know, they can cancel and they get their earnest money back. They can do that whole period of inspection, gives you the opportunity to have an inspector come in, give the house a thorough once over. And it also points to the fact that you may need, you know, additional inspections. You really can't expect an inspector to be an expert on everything. And the good ones will tell you, there's a problem. This looks like a structural problem. You need to get a structural engineer out here to look at it. Or roof seems to have some issues. I can't tell because it's a dry day whether these are current leaks or whether these were leaks that were fixed. You know, you might need to get a roofer out here. Roofer, HVAC, and structural are your 3 biggest people that come back out. Occasionally, you'll have somebody come out and look at mold. So occasionally, you'll have somebody come out and look at critters in the attic because there's evidence of rodent droppings and things like that. And sometimes you'll have inspections like radon. A lot of inspectors will do that at the same time. A lot of people, you know, a lot of homes in this area are actually do have some evidence of radon. It's not really an issue until it gets over the, you know, 0.04 range. But up until that point, you know, you don't know if you got radon until you test for it. Does everybody know what radon is? Just kind of a show of hands. Yes, you know what radon is? Okay, not everybody. Radon is a gas that's put out by the earth that actually has been shown to be a cause of certain forms of lung cancer. That usually collects in like basements because there's not a whole lot of airflow in basements. And that's why when you are showing a house and you see a radon mitigation system, it's almost always in the basement. And what it does is it simply creates airflow that gets the air moving and kind of takes the air out so that the radon doesn't collect. It's a lot of it around here, mostly because of the granite in the, you know, in the earth. Stone Mountain is a huge source of radon, and a lot of houses they get their concrete and their crushed stone from quarries that actually have high radon. So the house next door to them may not have radon, but they do because of what was used in the subfloor. Yeah. So don't assume that just because the house next door didn't have radon that yours wouldn't. It's just get a radon inspection. I think I mentioned the critters, you know, evidence of wildlife. Rats, hate to say it, mostly squirrels. There's a lot of building going on all over Atlanta. All their habitats are getting disturbed. They get cold, they get hot. Anyway, the attic seems like a perfect place to hang out. We've seen places where crawl spaces are also nice, warm, dark places to hide, and sometimes get stuck in. But if you have, you know, most of your pest control companies, There's also have a division, that deals with animal control and exclusion. So that's something else you may have to bring into. Now, I'm throwing all this stuff out and you're saying, but I've only got 3 days due diligence because I had to make it really short in order to get the contract because there are multiple offers. Yeah, it's a problem. However, I often, when I'm putting in a contract, I'll just go ahead and make the appointment for the inspection. I mean, we may not hear for a couple of days, but I kind of look at the calendar, kind of figure out, okay, today's Saturday, they're going to choose it on Sunday. We might go binding Monday. I'm going to have an inspector scheduled for Tuesday morning. So go ahead and set it up. They understand. I mean, you just tell them that you've got a pending contract. You're not under contract yet, but you want to be able to jump on it. And that way, you're not waiting until you're binding, until you go, oh, now I've got to get an inspector, and they're all busy. So now you're just scrambling for an inspector. A good inspector is worth their weight in gold. We have, each of your offices will have probably several inspectors on their vendor list. Check with them, check with other agents, see who they like, see who they, are kind of indifferent about. There's a few that they will say, don't ever use this person ever again. They missed, major things. One of the other things that the inspector is going to be looking for are things like polybutylene piping. We had a house one time and I couldn't figure out what was going on because underneath the sink, the pipes were white, but they looked like they'd been painted. Ding, ding. If you looked at it, you had to get a flashlight and get behind the hole behind the cabinet, and it was gray back in the back, which meant it was polybutylene. And someone, I'm not going to accuse the seller because it may have been something the seller didn't realize either when they bought it, but someone along the line had decided that that gray pipe needed to look white. And a casual glance would have said, oh, okay, no polybutylene, good, and then gone on. But this inspector, knew enough to kind of get back in there with his flashlight and kind of check the pipe because it looked a little strange. That's the kind of inspector you want. You want curious inspectors. You want inspectors who ask questions. You want inspectors who have a breadth of experience. Depth is good too, but like I said, they're inspectors. They're not experts in everything. They're kind of a jack of all trades. So they will be quick to tell you that you need additional work. Ask them, it's nice to have the seller's disclosure sent to the inspector before the inspection. It gives them an idea of what they're looking for. They can see that, okay, the HVAC system's 14 years old. I need to pay special attention to that. We don't know the age of the water tank, so I need to really take a look at that. Oh, it looks like they did an addition, 5 years ago. I'm going to be looking at where that addition was made and make sure that it was, looks like it's up to code and everything. It's that they find it very helpful, to kind of get a feel for what they're dealing with. Any questions about inspectors? Okay. So once you've gotten through all your inspections, well, let's go back. Due diligence periods, they're kind of all over the place right now. People keep asking me what's good for due diligence, and at this point, my response is whatever gets you the contract. Some people are actually waiving due diligence and going towards right to inspect repairs, which scares the daylights out of me because that doesn't really protect your client's earnest money. Due diligence does. So that's something that you really have to have a heart-to-heart talk with your client when they say, well, I don't need due diligence. In a fiduciary responsibility to your client, you need to make them aware that this is what happens if. There's a lot of what ifs in closings. So, so once you've gotten through your inspection period, then you're making a decision about whether you're going to ask the seller to remedy any problems that you have found. Let's keep it to structural and safety, and not repaint the stairwell. Cosmetic things are really not appropriate on a amendment to address concerns. You may not like the cream color you preferred; it was Arctic white, but that's why you can buy paint at Home Depot. So one of the things that you're doing is and warn your clients. Has everybody seen an inspection report? Raise your hands if you haven't. Yes, no?
Have or have not?
You say have or have not.
Raise your hands if you have not seen an inspection report. Okay. Prepare yourself and prepare your client. Used to be you could get an inspection report that was like 3 pages long. They just made some checks on different things and you're good to go. When I bought my house 30 years ago, it was a 1-page report that had 15 items on it that they had looked at. An inspection report today will easily be between 40 and 70 pages long. And everybody goes, oh my God. And especially a buyer who hasn't been prepared for it, because they equate length of the report with the house is falling apart. And that's not the case at all. Inspectors are taking very thorough pictures. They're taking pictures of a faucet with the water running so you can see that it was working when they looked at it. They might fill up a bathtub with water to see how it drains, also to see the color of the water, which would indicate there might be an issue with the water tank. They're taking pictures of, putting, GFCI plugs to make sure that, they're working and showing lights coming on. I mean, they're documenting every step of the way. So all those pictures take up a lot of space on a piece of paper. So that 1-page inspection report I had 30 years ago would probably be like a 65-page report. They're taking pictures of animal droppings in the attic. They're taking pictures of a crack that they're concerned about. You get a pretty good picture of the house by the time you're finished. And also some companies will even provide serial numbers for HVAC units and water water heaters and things like that. And that's kind of fun to have, because it might be helpful if you're looking at a home warranty or something like that down the road. But basically, again, circling back, I sound like a press secretary. You're going to be looking at things that affect the safety and the health and the structural integrity of the house. If you can get repairs, plumbing, I would consider that a safety issue, because I don't want water all over my house, after closing. I would consider cracks that I could fit a quarter in a basement, to be reviewed. You can write an amendment to address concerns, addressing these. Sometimes you have to extend your due diligence in order to be able to get a good picture of it. Sometimes the seller will ask to extend due diligence because they want to get an estimate, and there's not quite enough time for an estimate, in the time that you have available. So, kind of be a little flexible during due diligence. Just in order to be able to get the clearest picture possible for your client. Your seller needs to know exactly what they're being asked to do, and your buyer needs to know exactly what they're buying. So it's kind of in everybody's best interest to kind of know what's going on. Once you get through the inspection, everybody kind of agrees on the repairs that are needed, or says, I'm not doing repairs, but here's X amount of money, towards your closing costs to take care of the repairs. That's very common, especially if you have a seller who's just, anxious to move on and just doesn't want to spend a lot of time coordinating workmen and everything. So from there you go. This contract to close process graph is a little misleading because it makes it sound like the title comes after the inspection. Whereas really, when you first have an accepted contract, you're sending a copy of the contract to the lender. And you're also sending a copy of the contract to your closing attorney. Now, the closing attorney might not order the title immediately because, they have to kind of go through a process, and if it's a short due diligence, they may wait until due diligence is over to do it, just to kind of save themselves some time and money. But at the same time, they can start working on potential title issues, such as like Renee mentioned this morning in the Dunwoody meeting. Sometimes the titles and the deeds aren't as clear as they could be as far as who actually owns the property. There's a lot of properties coming on the market these days that are actually result of divorce, result of a death of a parent or a spouse. But for some reason, for one way or the other, the property was never, the deed doesn't reflect the current ownership. So there's going to have to be a little bit of work involved in that. Also, sometimes you have a buyer or a seller who can't attend the closing. So they're going to need a power of attorney for someone else to sign for them, or they're going to be doing a mail away closing or whatever. All those things have to be done ahead of time. And if there's going to be a power of attorney used, we see that sometimes with relocations where the wife's been moved to Atlanta for her job and the husband is coming later. And he just gives a power of attorney so he doesn't have to be at the closing on a particular day. But sometimes the lenders won't let you do that. So there's a lot of coordination back and forth depending on their loan and depending on the lender, whether or not they can, use a POA. So that kind of stuff, is best sorted out early in the process rather than at the last minute. So while you're doing the inspections and the title company's doing their thing, there's another party that's also busy, and that's the loan officer. So unless you got a cash deal, your loan officer has hit overdrive at this point. Hopefully, you have a pre-approval, which means that your client, a buyer has already gone through the credit check process, and all you're waiting for is an appraisal. That's the ideal situation, but if that's not the case, then there's going to have to be work done to verify their employment, to verify their assets, verify their income, and also at the same time, the appraisal. There's, I could get into a lot of appraisal issues here, but let's just say that the sooner that the appraisal can be ordered, the better. Right now, appraisers are just running 23 hours a day, and they are working nights, weekends. I mean, there's just so much hitting them at this time. Don't wait. You may not want to wait until after due diligence in order to authorize the appraisal. If your due diligence is going pretty well and you feel pretty confident that you're going to come out of it successfully, go ahead and order the appraisal. I mean, don't wait a week, until after the due diligence is over before you order it. Let your loan officer know in writing that you think to go ahead and get the appraisal done. They'll come back to your client and get their financial arrangements set up so that they can go ahead and order it. And then, we can go ahead and get in line, because there's a line for appraisals these days. So we need to be conscious of that. And we also, if we've got a short time for an appraisal contingency, we also need to be mindful of that too. Any questions so far? Okay, so once we've gone through So really, we're talking about inspectors, we're talking about a attorney, we're talking about a lender. What other people are we talking about on a closing? Can anybody just kind of, throw a few people out as far as what other kind of people you're dealing with, during the closing process?
Closing attorney?
Closing attorney, who else?
Buyer's agent.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Buyer's agent. Seller's agent.
Buyer, yeah, buyers, the agents, very good, yes. Who else?
The underwriter.
Underwriter, part of the lender, yes, they're very important. I wish I knew who they were so I could send them cookies, but it doesn't happen very often. Who else?
The seller and the buyer.
Yeah, Bala said that. One of the things you need to keep sometimes you have people in the background that you don't necessarily intersect with, but they're big people that are part of the process. For example, if your buyer is getting a gift from a parent, or if then the parent often feels like they have a vote in the process. So not only are you working with your clients who are the buyers, you're also having to accommodate, parents who are inserting themselves in the process for one reason or another. Another one is, strangely enough, the kids. I have seen so many processes where you're going through the parents of the house, and then you'll have a kid that will go, I hate it. Oh, really? Why do you hate it, honey? Blah, blah, blah. Well, P.S., there goes the house. It's like, hello. But there it is. You're kind of balancing, you've got a lot of different people that are putting their 2 cents in. So you've also got all the different inspectors. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things people ask me about are surveys. And when should I order a survey? Can I just use the old survey? When do I order a survey? Right now, the surveys are taking a minimum of 3 weeks. Sometimes you can just have them go out and put the pins out so you can kind of see where the copies are, where the corners are of the lot are. If you're in an established neighborhood where you don't have people cutting across your yard to get into their driveway, or you don't have any arguments over where the back fence goes and stuff like that, it's kind of up to the buyer whether or not they want to get a survey. I would always recommend one. I know some agents feel very strongly about it, that not only do you recommend one, but you make them sign a waiver if they decide not to. And you think, and even in neighborhoods, you think, well, it's been like that for 20 years. What could be the problem? 2 examples. We had nice neighborhood, probably, this is probably about 5-6 years ago, $600,000 houses, great backyard, kind of went down to a creek. And there was a retaining pond like 2 doors down, but it didn't really impact this particular property. And the buyers were looking for a specific property big enough to put a pool in. So they were very excited about the pool, big yard, 1.5 acres, so excited. And we asked for a copy of the survey, and they had a copy of it, and they provided it. And it turns out that part of the property was in a flood zone because of that creek in the back. Not much, but enough of it so that you couldn't put a pool in because it would cover the area where they were planning to put the pool. That was one problem. The other problem was there was a sewer easement that went all the way through the back of their yard. And you can't put a pool on top of the sewer easement. They have to be able to get to the sewer pipes, and they don't want to dig through your pool to do it. So, I mean, the easement is not something that comes up on the amendment on the seller's disclosure. The gentleman said that he doesn't pay flood insurance, which is absolutely true. You know, it wasn't touching the house, but there was a flood zone there that needed to be addressed for the building that the sellers wanted to, move forward with. So after all that, finding the sewer easement going through the backyard kind of put the kibosh on ever having a pool back there. So we were able to get out of the contract and get the earnest money back. That was one episode. Two, another house, 700,000. I mean, this happens to like all levels of houses, but it's just like big, beautiful house, gorgeous backyard, just absolutely gorgeous, landscaped to within an inch of its life, fenced with this, custom fence. The fence had a matching dog run. They had a fire pit that was all paved, and just, the rock was just gorgeous. It's beautiful, beautiful. And we got lucky and got a survey pretty quickly, only to discover that there was this line going through the middle of the yard, and we're like, what is that line? And this is when, if you get a survey and you don't understand it, you go to your closing attorney and you go, hey, can you take a look at this? And what am I looking at here? And in this case, the attorney goes, oh, you hate it when they do that. So what happened was that when the seller had bought the house, he had walked the property with the previous owner, and she had pointed to the back of a fence and said, there is the corner of your property. Okay. Unfortunately, she was wrong. And the previous owner didn't have a survey and didn't realize it. So he had done all this improvement to this area, only to discover about 40 feet of it belonged to the city of Mountain Park. And it was just a weird little 40-foot swath of land that nobody even knew it was there. The builders on one side of the swath hadn't touched it, and the builders on the other side of the swath hadn't touched it, but it ran behind like 5 or 6 houses, had never been taxed, nobody knew who owned it. But the thing is, he had built into this 40-foot swath, several different things. So it was like, well, so you're trying to sell me something you don't actually own, was basically what it came down to. And in that case, we were able to negotiate the price down 50 grand, because a lot of the allure of the house was the fact that this backyard had been so well developed, but then it turns out he didn't own it. He couldn't sell it. And nobody knew who owned it. Mountain Park didn't know who owned it. I mean, the attorney had to go back like 100 years, and they still couldn't figure out who owned it. And then you start getting into, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and whoever, and they were like, we don't know who owns it. So ended up getting like a $50,000 reduction on the price of the house in order to compensate the buyer for, not being able to own it, or in case somebody did step forward in the future and say, you're building on my property, then, he would have the money to be able to, compensate for it. So,
Diane,
yes.
so in that instance, wouldn't that be a type of encroachment? I can't remember what. I have to go back to my class notes.
You're talking
my real
about
estate class notes.
they've been poaching on it for so long it's theirs.
Exactly.
Well, they hadn't been paying taxes on it.
But you don't have to pay taxes on it in order for it to be yours. It's just that from your using it without its use without the owner stopping you.
Agreed. And that's why I'm not an attorney, and neither are you, and neither are any other agents. Well, except with a couple exceptions.
Right.
But that's why we turn it over to an attorney and go sort this out. And
With
They,
them
you know,
not being
they-
able to sort it, that's just weird, no?
well, it was, I mean, well, what happened is that, given enough time, they could have sorted it out, but we had a closing coming up.
Okay, I
So,
got you.
so, at that point, they just decided, you know, we're just gonna do it this way, and then if something comes up in the future, we'll have $50,000 to address it with.
Okay,
So that was thought to be, the fairest for all concerned, because there was no time to do a thorough title search to figure out who owned it. And even the city of Mountain Park was kind of like, what property? So like, it was a really weird little situation, which is why I'd like to pull it out for these classes. But
and did you ever find out how it was resolved?
as far as I know, he's still enjoying his fire pit. He had small children. They had a really nice play set in the back that had been one of these, looks like one of these that come in at the parks, with all the wood and everything. That I guess the true owner of that little swath of land back there, it's probably gone. If I were to guess, it's probably gone dead as far as who owns it. Probably there probably weren't any survivors over the last 125 years. So finding somebody who could actually lay claim to it would probably be an issue. But that's why we have attorneys.
Okay,
And
thank
we
you.
are not an attorney. Thank God. So contract close process. Like I said, there's a lot of things going on at the same time. You've got your inspections, you've got your closing attorneys working, you've got your lenders working. One of the things that I keep getting is like, look, I hate calling the attorney or I hate calling the lender because I always feel like I'm bothering them. Get over that real fast, because that's your job and their job is to respond. Whether they do it or not is another story. But if you have a good relationship, with a couple of lenders, if you have a good relationship with a couple of closing attorneys, then sorry, my cat's walking on the keyboard. If you have the that kind of relationship, they know that you're not going to keep them on the phone for 20 minutes asking, well, what if, or they're looking for specific, I'm looking for information. How are we doing? I mean, it's a quick call on Monday morning. Hi, do you need anything from me? Are we on track to close on the 30th? Great, super. Bye, have a great day. Click. Calling the attorney. Do you have everything you need? No, I still don't have the seller's, information sheet. On it. Give the listing agent a call. Say, hey, they still haven't filled out their seller's information sheet. Can you please get them to send it in? Absolutely. So you're on top of the process. You're on top of the process when the appraisal comes through. And people ask me when they're doing a contract, should I make the appraisal due the same time as the end of the financing contingency? My preference is no. I like to set it like 2 days ahead of time, simply because that appraisal has to go to the underwriter and it's going to take a day or so for them to review it. I mean, a lender can tell me it looks clean, it looks fine, that value, whatever, but until the underwriter, has blessed it, then it hasn't really been fully accepted. So I like to kind of give the lender a couple of days in there in order to be able to evaluate it, just to make sure, so that I'm not at the end of both my financing and appraisal contingency dates, and have a little bit of wiggle room there just in case I do have to address an issue with the appraisal. Now, I know the exhibit, allows you some time in order to address any, valuation concerns. But the more time you've got, the better the resolution will be. So weekly phone calls. or an email, depending upon, how they prefer to, correspond with you. To be honest, some lenders won't have anything to do with you. I mean, there's like a handful of lenders and banks that, when they come through, we just kind of go, oh God, because, they just don't respond. You can't get an answer out of them. You're not, they don't consider you their client. And so they don't, they just don't fool with you, which is kind of short-sighted of them, in my opinion, because if I have a bad experience with a lender, do you think I'm going to recommend that lender to a client? No. I will do everything I can to say, fine, but why don't you talk to these people also and also get estimates? I'm going to encourage them, to, shop around. I mean, if it's a big box, bank, or if it's a lender that I just have had experience with and swore I'd never work with them again. I mean, it makes a difference. I mean, there's some lenders, you tell your clients ahead of time, look, they don't read the contracts, they don't pay attention to the deadlines. So, and I've had previous clients who have had communication issues with them once they've gone under contract. Oh, no, I like so-and-so, he's been great, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, but you're not dealing with so-and-so after the contract goes through. After that, you're working with pre-closers, you're working with loan processors, you're working with underwriters. The loan officer is kind of got on top of it, kind of like you are, but there's not a whole lot of control there, after a certain point. So, the lender's back room is just as important as, the lender himself, as far as I'm concerned. Comments? Agree, disagree? Always have at least 3 lenders, 3 inspectors, to give to a client. One, and also make it very clear, these are ones that I suggest. You're free to use anybody you like, because you don't want to be in a position where you told me to use him and, he missed blah, 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 blah. So you owe me $15,000 to replace this plumbing and that sort of thing. You really don't want to put yourself in that position. The choice is the buyer, or, the choice is the buyer. So give them the choice, make sure that they're aware that if you don't like these choices, well, feel free to bring in, Uncle Joey, whoever you're comfortable with, but at least you have fulfilled your fiduciary duty to provide them with information that would help them, make good decisions. You can only advise, you can't force. So, I mean, as I said, I have a list of 3. 3 agents, 3 inspectors. I have a list of 3 or 4 lenders. Closing attorneys, unless they've got a strong preference, I generally kind of stick with the same closing attorney. We have a relationship, and I know that that file is going to get the attention it deserves. So, but if they have another one they want to use, it's closer to their home or work or whatever, that's fine too. I do tend to stay away. I mean, when you're if you're a seller and you get if you get an offer that has a law firm that you've never heard of, it's worth picking up the phone and doing a little research to see if they even do real estate. A lawyer may, he may have done like 2 closings 3 years ago. I mean, is that going to be somebody who's going to be able to handle the deadlines, the contractual deadlines, and everything else on a timely basis? And if you don't like that closing attorney, if you're the listing agent, feel free to recommend another one, because it's like, well, counter with a different one, counter with one that and trust, or ask, why this one? They don't have any real estate experience. Makes me really nervous when their uncle's going to handle the closing.
So Diane, the lender is not the one who normally secures the closing attorney?
No, nope. That's the choice. That's generally the choice of the buyer. Now, the closing attorney, it's kind of a weird relationship. They're actually working for the lender if there's a lender involved. But they're the choice of the buyer. So, the buyer can say, I want to use Campbell and Brennan, I want to use, Gannick, I want to use, McManamy, whoever they want to use. And, all these, attorneys, they've all worked with a lot of different lenders. I've never run into a case where, a lender refused to work with a particular closing attorney. So, but yeah, it's the buyer pretty much gets to choose. A listing, a seller can counter if they don't like it, and come out from there. But other than that, it's it's pretty much the choice of the buyer. Does that answer the question?
Yes, can I ask you just one more question? When you were back, I want to back up a minute, when you were talking about the appraisal. So the
Okay.
appraisals, is that outside of the due diligence period? So,
Normally,
okay,
but these are not normal times. In the past, it used to be we go through due diligence, and then when due diligence was complete, then we'd order an appraisal, because we didn't want to spend $400 or $500 on an appraisal if we were going to end up canceling the contract, right?
right,
But these days, the deadlines are so crunched because of all the time people are giving up because of multiple offers, that sometimes we do have to order, the appraisal before you're finished with due diligence. I like to make sure that our inspections were good and we're not really looking at any surprises or anything. But if you've got 5 days of due diligence and you've got 17 days for your appraisal, if you give up 7 days at the top you're only giving yourself a week to get an appraisal. You gotta give yourself, and you gotta give the appraiser, some time to do their work. Otherwise, you're writing, amendments to extend the appraisal contingency. And honestly, if your seller's got a backup, that's like an all cash deal that came along after you went under contract, they may not want to. They may be thinking it's perfect excuse to get out of the deal. So I like to keep the opportunities for getting out of the deal as few as possible.
thank you.
That makes sense?
Yes.
So we've gone through, so what time is it? Are we ready for a break yet?
We usually go to 2:30, but I heard that, but we usually go to 2:30, but it can be
Okay,
earlier.
okay. I just want to make sure, respecting
You can
everybody's,
compromise on 2:15 if you want.
whatever, 2:30 is fine. I just didn't want to step on everybody's break. Okay, so once you've gone through all these things and everybody's done their job, then we've gotten down to the point where the lender has to give out a disclosure. It's called a CD, closing disclosure, 3 days prior to closing. No ifs, ands, buts. It's federal law. It came into being about 5 or 6 years ago, after, well, probably more than that at this point. But right after the housing crash in 2007, 2008, they felt that there was a need to be more forthcoming on the fees and things that were due at closing. A lot of times, it seems wild now, but a lot of times people didn't even get their closing statement until like an hour before closing. Getting the money to they were bringing, cashier's checks to closing. They were, like at the bank, an hour before closing, trying to wire the money. It was just wild, wild west. So the solution that came up was with a closing disclosure that is very, very precise on the amounts of money that are going to be due at closing. Now, there's some leeway here and there. The feds kind of put in some variances that are allowed, stuff it's like within, 5% or 10% of what was quoted at the time that they applied for their loan. But if it's significantly different, they have to, be, all this stuff has to be disclosed, and they have to be done 3 days ahead of time so that it can be addressed. So, like popular things that sometimes I don't know about, I had a seller one time who swore to me that there was no initiation fee in their HOA. And shame on me, I did not check, because he had been the president of the HOA. So he would know, right? Yeah, not so much. Apparently they had passed, he hadn't been president for like 5 years. And in that 5 years, they had passed an initiation fee of $1,000. And that initiation fee, he didn't know that, and he didn't pay attention because it didn't apply to him. If you lived in that neighborhood already, you don't have to worry about initiation fee. You already live there, especially if it's a mandatory HOA. So a lot of times that stuff just kind of goes over people's heads, and they just don't pay attention to it. It doesn't apply to them. It's not important to them. But it becomes important to them if they fail to put it on their community association disclosure. So he put 0, and me bad, I took his word for it. I did not call the HOA to say, hey, can you confirm these numbers for me? And at closing, I got this call from the pre-closer that said, you might want to prepare the seller. He's going to have to pay $1,000 for the initiation fee. And I said, there is no initiation fee. And she goes, oh, yes, there is. And sure enough, it just hadn't been disclosed. So what happens if you don't disclose an initiation fee on the community association disclosure? The seller pays. And if you think the seller was happy about paying that $1,000, let me disabuse you of that notion. He was not happy. He refused to pay it. He said, I'm not paying it. I said, well, you kind of have to, because up here in this paragraph, you said that there was no fee, and up here in this paragraph, it tells you that you're responsible for it if you don't disclose it. Well, I didn't read that. We discussed it, but it was $1,000. It's a lot of money.
Hey, Diane, I have a question about that.
Sure.
I'm closing on mine on Wednesday, and the listing agent called me last night. We know about the community association dues, but she was called, or one of her partners in the team called the association and said that there is an initiation fee as well. And we're in a kind of a situation, it's not a large amount of money like you just mentioned, but we're in a situation now where who pays that? Does my buyer pay it, or does her seller pay it? Neither one knew.
Well, it doesn't matter whether they knew or not. I mean, the fact is, the seller could have picked up the phone and called their HOA, but they probably didn't, which is what happens a lot. So if you're a listing agent and you're getting these filled out forms, do as I say, not as I do, and double check it. But you can just send an email to the HOA person and say, can you please confirm blah, blah, blah. And usually they'll come back and go, yes. And then you're good. You don't have to talk to them on the phone or anything.
So would that have been up to me to do?
No, when you gave it, it would have been a good thing to do. But like I said, it's one of those things that you don't always do, because they're very sure of the, you give them the form, you tell them that, to fill it out, you tell them to go to their HOA to confirm the prices and everything. But that paragraph is pretty clear on top of that page that says, if you don't disclose it, you are responsible for it.
Yeah, I've got it right here.
Yeah, it's very clear, and they signed it, and so as a result, they're responsible for it. The seller, not the buyer.
Okay.
So they're not going to like it. They're going to kick and scream and yell. But how much is it? Just out of curiosity.
200.
Oh, okay. Well,
The total dues are 4, but the initiation is 2.
Okay, well that's not bad. Yeah.
No. Okay, I was just wondering, because for future knowledge, I'm going to do that for my own self, so for either side, listing or buy side, so. okay, thank
It's
you.
not a bad idea. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is not online. And you can ask them to, check with the HOA, and, you can sometimes tell that they haven't because you've gotten it back and they've only got like the name of the HOA person, but no contact information.
No, they're very thorough with that. I have everything, but
Well,
I
yeah, and
should
so
have
was
done
and
that.
so was my client. He knew exactly who the president was, and he had his cell phone number, and he had all that stuff. He just didn't pick up the phone to call
Yeah.
because he knew it all already.
Duly noted. I will do it next time.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a quick email. I mean, really, just to that person and just saying, can you please confirm, blah blah blah, and you'll get it back in 2 or 3 days, and yeah, it's fine, and then you move on. I've had to correct community association disclosures, when we got it back and they went, oh, there is an assessment. I forgot about that. They're redoing the roof on the clubhouse. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that. Well, okay, fine. Disclose it. We'll do it on disclosure, initial it, send it back over for the buyer to sign. And that way, either if they don't sign it, then, well, you kind of have to, because otherwise we can't move forward with this because we're not paying it. Anyways, well, you might, depending on the deal, but it's just something that makes every contract to close people. And I don't know about you guys, but agents, we really don't like surprises. We just don't. I mean, surprise parties are good, if you're turning 40 or whatever, but we don't like surprises in our closings. And because surprises are usually bad. There are very few good surprises in a closing. And the best way to make sure you're not getting any surprises is, being proactive, making the phone calls, sending the emails, making sure that you are aware of what everybody is doing at the same time. Now, remember, going back to what I said, you can do this with one deal. You can probably do it with two. With three, you're going to start juggling. You start having three or more contracts that are ongoing. That's when you want to start thinking about leveraging your time, because you're going to be spending all your time following up with these people. You're going to be spending all your time double checking this information. At that point, you might want to think about how you can leverage the work that needs to be done, because you have to start asking yourself, is the best use of my time being on the phone, trying to get hold of, lenders who don't want to talk to me, for 3 hours, or is my best use of my time is using that 3 hour for lead gen? I know what I know what your production coaches would say, but again, I do think you just kind of need to get your hands dirty with a few, just to kind of see what the challenges are and be able to anticipate them ahead of time. Other escrow instructions. This whole process thing right here, it's all for a this is kind of geared for states that have escrow closings rather than attorney closings like we do. So that really doesn't apply to us. When you have, let's go back to the beginning when we talked about earnest money. So when y'all get a check, for earnest money, what do you do with it? Volunteers?
Pay my credit card bill.
With the earnest money?
No, I'm joking.
Take it to the office as soon as possible.
Yes.
We'll talk to you in
Turn it
jail.
into your
Okay? You
So
take it to
pay
the
it back
office.
to
When do you take
yes.
it? When do you take it to the office?
Immediately.
Immediately. Okay.
Within 72 hours.
Faster than that. I mean, get it out of your hands as fast as possible. I mean, Stacey, are all the Raw Script offices using Earnest now?
Using Earnest, what do you mean?
The Earnest for the earnest money deposits, the app?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
I think
I
they
gotta
are.
ask Ellie.
I think, and I know they're using it at Dunwoody. I know they're using it at Peachtree Road. I think they're using it at Buckhead too. But check with your MCA if you don't know what Earnest is. It's spelled EARNNEST, Earnest.
Hey, Diane, so can you just have your client drop off the earnest money at the office instead of meeting them?
Sure. You can.
Okay.
Just make sure that the address of the property is on their check, because otherwise you've just got a check from John Smith kind of floating around, and then you get the email from the MCA. Who does this check belong to?
It sort of also comes down to your, the kind of impression you want to leave with your client in terms of your customer service. Sometimes if okay, here we are in Dunwoody and the client's driving in from Douglasville, I'd really rather not go to Douglasville to pick up their earnest money check. Yes, ask them to bring it in. But you know, it's a choice on your part how to conduct yourself. You can
Meet them at
always,
Smyrna.
right, you can always ask them to overnight it using FedEx or UPS. Never the post office, because that's not reliable. So, you know, but it's your job to get it in on time.
Well,
See to it. I mean,
check with your MCA and see. I think Ellie told me that all the Ross Group are using Earnest now, but if they're not, you know, beg for it, because it's amazing. It is an app, and you can do it on your desktop. You can do it on your phone. What you're doing is you put the address of the property in. You put the buyer's name, the buyer's email address, the buyer's cell phone number. You put your name in it. And you hit, and you say $5,000 earnest money. And Earnest sends the request. It's kind of like PayPal. It sends the request to your buyer, and your buyer can use a credit card or a bank, you know, whatever they're using. I mean, I think I'm not quite sure how it works on that end, but they put the money in for, it's like, I guess it has to be a check because it's an ACH transfer. So they put in their bank account information, and then they hit send, and instantly the MCA gets the earnest money. And it's usually before you've even had a chance to put it in command. So, and it's really great because they've got the money in hand, so they're not having to wait for the check to clear in case you drop out of due diligence and you have to refund the earnest money. So you're not having to wait like a week or 10 days for the check to clear because they've already got the money in hand. And you get a notice, and the MCA's office gets a notice, and the buyer gets a notice. Everybody gets a receipt, and then you can send the receipt to the listing agent and say, yes, you know, we've paid our money. I mean, it's a very slick system. I love it. And it sure beats, you know, chasing after a check, you know, at rush hour, you know, at Perimeter or down in Buckhead, or, you know, over at Peachtree Road, you know, 5:30 in the afternoon. But, you know, check with your MCA and see if you have it, because if you do, it's wonderful. But that has to be, you know, your contract says, you know, that you're going to have that check in by a certain time. And if you don't have it in by a certain time, then you're going to have to do an amendment that says, you know, the check was received at, you know, after that time, and everybody agrees, you know, everybody has to sign off on it, agreeing that, yes, we understand, we're okay with it. And also the MCA at some point, they used to have to, you know, send out a notice saying, you know, we don't have this, you have to.
yes, the MCA does have to send a notice to all parties, and this is the one time that the seller can terminate. I mean, obviously you have your, yeah. And if you've worked so hard to win this contract for your buyer, you know, don't let this happen to you.
Yeah, that's one of the deadlines you should have on your calendar. And it is shocking how many times the buyers forget it. I mean, you think it would be like, oh, I've got to write a $7,000 check. You know, you think you'd remember that one. No, they're excited. They're too excited. They've got the house. You know, they've been looking for 6 months. They finally found the house of their dreams, and they're, you know, getting an inspection, and they're scheduling the inspection and everything. And everybody forgets about the earnest money check. It's the wildest thing. And then all of a sudden, you know, you wake up, before you go to bed that night, you look at your calendar, it's like, oh, earnest money's due tomorrow. Oh my God. And then so you're like racing around trying to figure out how to get the check. It's not just you, it's like almost every other agent. It's the wildest thing, but be mindful of it, because that's not how you want to present yourself. You don't want to be calling somebody going, I need your earnest money check, because that doesn't sound like you're in control, right? We need to be in control. We're in control of the process. Being in control of the process means you're on top of the deadlines. So yeah, earnest money. Now, also keep in mind that earnest money, the lender is going to be really interested in that earnest money, because the lender wants to know where it came from. The lender has to be able to document that a certain amount of money has already been taken out of the buyer's account. So they're going to ask for a copy of that check, or they're going to ask for a copy of that deposit notice. So, make sure that gets forwarded to them, quickly, and make sure that, the receipts or a copy of the check or copies of the deposits from the MCA's office, they're going to show up in command. So just go ahead and just, forward it on to the other agent. Just kind of keep the routes of communication open. Say, yep, I'm on top of it. Here you go. Here's your check. We're good. Moving on. It's just a little, check mark on the professionalism box. So once we've gone through that, the closing disclosure is sent out 3 days prior to closing, so that everybody can take a look at it and make sure there hasn't been any major, changes in the amount of monies due and everything. Your client has to sign that 3 days prior to closing. He may even get it like 5 or 6 days prior, if it's a pretty standard closing. But he has to sign it within 3 days, because they don't have a choice. If it's less than 3 days, you're going to have to extend closing, and you don't want to extend closing over a CD. And that's one thing that every time I call a lender, are we on track to get the CD out on X day? Back it up 3 days. Are we on track to get the CD by then? Absolutely. Or we might be pushing it. I need to know. I don't want to know at the last minute. If I have to change, closing dates, if I have to change, anything like that, I want plenty of time to be able to do it, so that everybody can make, the changes on their end. So closing, just ask your buyer, hey, did you get your closing disclosure? Did you sign it? Did you send it back? Okay, good. Okay, we're on top of that. If you're a listing agent, call the buyer's agent. Hey, did y'all get the CD? Y'all set? Oh yeah, we're all set. Sometimes you can call the lender. You can call lender. You can call the closing attorney. They'll also have their flow sheet, and they're also looking to make sure that that CD has been signed. So, and some offices even use the CD as their closing statement. It's kind of funny. You've got an Alta statement. They've got the CD sometimes used. Sometimes it just looks a little different from office to office. Funds transferred. It seems impossible, but really, when you're at a closing, part of the closing is actually waiting for the money to transfer from one account to the next. If it's a buyer, the buyer should have already wired the funds that they need to the closing attorney prior to closing. Do not let them do that the morning of the closing. Everybody thinks a wire transfer is like instant. It's not. If you get toward the end of the month, you're going through the Federal Reserve System. And when you're going through the Federal Reserve System at the end of the month, there's a lot of stuff going through the Federal Reserve System. You've got Social Security checks going through the Federal Reserve. You've got a lot of transactions going through. So things can get held up. It's perfectly possible, but it might take 24 hours for a wire to hit. It's unusual, but it's not unheard of. Again, we don't like surprises. We hate surprises. We really hate going to a closing and having the attorney pull you, aside and go, "We haven't gotten the money yet." Yeah, that just kind of gives you a cold pit in your stomach when that happens. But if they, we ask them to wire the money the day ahead of time, preferably before 4 o'clock, because that's kind of when the banks are kind of closing down and everything. But that's when the markets are closing. Everything's kind of closing down financially. But in order to get that money to the closing attorney on time, so they have their money in hand. And so when they're going through the closing, has anybody here never been to a closing, either your own or for a client? Can you raise your hand if you've never been to a closing? Okay, I've got a very limited view. Stacy, what are you seeing? Okay, well, I'm just going to go through it real quick. It's a very stylized procedure. When you walk in, the sellers are sitting on the left side of the attorney, the buyers are sitting on the right side of the attorney. You're not sitting next to the attorney, you're sitting down at the end of the table, because at that point, your job is basically done. When you get to sellers, first the closing statement sent out, everybody looks at it, everybody agrees to it, and then the paper starts. If you're a buyer and you're getting a loan, your buyer's going to have writer's cramp by the time the hour's over. But it takes about 25 to 35 minutes for them to get all that signed. Then the attorney has to turn around. They have to send it back. They have to send the signed papers back to the bank. The papers have to be reviewed quickly at the bank. They've got a desk that does that. And then they release the funds. The attorney might already have the funds in hand, that to be released, but he has to have the okay from the bank before he can release it. So at that point, funds are transferred to the attorney. Attorney can then disperse the funds as needed. Usually, if it's a large amount and the seller has given their wiring instructions so that the money is wired directly to their account, we really discourage sellers walking around with $70,000, $80,000, $150,000 checks in their pocket. It just makes people nervous. But some sellers just love the idea of holding $150,000 in their hand. Try to encourage the sellers to, have it wired. It's much safer. If they get hit by a truck, on their way out of the attorney's office, finding that check may be problematic, in the next few weeks. So, and we all do this wire transfer, identity theft, wire transfer disclosure. Have you all heard like some of the horror stories behind that?
No.
It's scary, because what happens, we have them all sign this because we say, be careful, don't accept any instructions from anybody other than the closing attorney. But if they get down to the end, they forget, their minds on closings, their minds on movers, their minds on the new carpet guy. They're not, the last thing they're thinking of is wire fraud. So you have to kind of think of it for them. Make sure that they confirm the wiring instructions with their closing coordinator at the attorney's office before they send that wire. Pain in the neck, I understand it, but that's why the hackers are making so much money off this deal, because most of the attorneys right now have secure email, but most of the buyers don't. They see the hackers read email, they go, aha, and so they send wiring instructions that look very, very official to this, poor buyer, and the buyer is sending him, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, and it's going to some, nice little bank in the Caribbean, where it's then transferred to, you know, someplace in Russia or the Middle East. So it's never to be seen again. I mean, you can't just, I mean, you have to be able to take a wire back, you have to know it like within like 3 minutes. You have to go, oh my God. And then, you know, that you might be able to get it back then. But after that, I mean, it's gone. And that's how criminals are just, you know, they just take advantage of the fact that people aren't paying attention. So that wire fraud transfer, you know, that wire fraud, you notice that everybody has to sign, you know, when they get a listing or when they do their buyer brokerage agreement. This is where that really comes into play, because we don't want them losing their life savings over a mistake that, you know, could have been easily prevented. So when they're going to, you know, when you're talking to them, you know, before closing, I mean, you're like, you know, do you have your wiring instructions from, you know, so and so? You know, make sure when you go to the bank to call her to confirm them. It sounds silly, but it also sounds like you're looking out for their best interests.
Miss Diane, I was just gonna, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that it's crazy that you brought that up, because that same thing happened to my mom when she bought her house back in February, and she lost like $30,000, and we were on vacation and she was about to buy her house, and in the email that they sent her, they changed like the lowercase L to a capital I. And so you like didn't notice, and she didn't call the closing attorney, but she had got the email and stuff, and then she wired the money while we were on vacation. And then like a few hours later, they were like, you never wired anything. And she was like, yes, I did. And then by the time she tried to call the bank and stuff, it was gone. And then she ended up having to front another 30,000 just to close, because they're like, if you want to close, you know, you still have to pay this money. And so she ended up losing like 60K in 1 month. But it was really like, I didn't realize how bad it was and how easy it is for people to do that, but it very much did happen.
Roseanne, that is the worst.
Yeah, I feel
I'm
bad.
so sorry. Were they
Thank
able
you
to
for
recover
sharing.
any of it?
No, she wasn't able to recover anything, but she did move into her house. I mean, she has her house. She's happy with her house,
Well,
but
it's lucky she had a spare 30 grand. A lot of people don't.
yeah,
Really?
it definitely wasn't part of her life savings. So I'm glad that it didn't really affect her too much, but still, I still felt bad because she's a good person, and I feel like
Yes.
some things shouldn't happen to some people. So
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, y'all, we're past 2:30. We're
Oh,
at
okay, well then
2:34.
let's take what,
I was
15
trying to
minutes?
raise my hand. So I need to take a picture. I need you to stop screen sharing, please, Mrs. Black.
All right, I will. I can figure out how to do that. I can stop sharing the red button. Yeah.
There we go. Okay. Everybody. All right, here we go. Cheese. Verify. Got it. Come on. Oh. All right, let me try one more time. Cheese. Oh, you got it. Thanks. Just delayed reaction. Okay, so we will be back at 2:49. Okay. Thank you. my gosh. Stacy Stubbs.
Amazing how fast you can wolf down a peanut butter sandwich.
All right, kids, one more. Anuto. Let me see you. Hey, Diamond. Okay, Katrina, Nicole, Justin, Melissa, Mike. Please, cameras, Lynn. James, Lynn, Mike, Justin, Delana. All right, I am taking the shot, whether you're here or not. Please. Got it. Okay, gang, I want to mention that I'll be facilitating the test after your class on Thursday. Usually because everybody wants to get it over with, we're not going to take a break. We're just, once the class is over at 4 or 4:15, whichever, we will roll right into it. And most people are finished in under 30 minutes, but you're given an hour or you're given 50 minutes. I have never seen anybody need that much time. I'm going to email all of you a link, and I'm going to email, excuse me, email it today, that simply takes you to the testing site. I won't give you the code for actually taking the test until like 4 o'clock that day. So again, you can go to click the link that I'm going to send you, but you can't take the test until I give you the passcode. It will be 50 multiple choice. It's going to ask you name, and then it's going to say place, and you can just say Rawls Group Virtual Ignite March 2021 or something. That it really doesn't matter. But so 50 multiple choice, you have to get 75 to pass, and it's been a long time since anyone didn't pass. So don't stress. And I want to share with you just one sec, screen share. This is the Rawls Group Virtual Ignite YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and search, and I highly recommend you click on playlist, and then you'll see that I've got put in from our July, August class, our December class, and our March class. And
Stacy, we can't.
We don't see your
We can't see it.
oh, dang it. I forgot to click share. I'm so sorry. All right, let me just go back to show you what y'all yell out. Okay, here's the YouTube channel. So it's Rawls Group Virtual Ignite. And then when you get here, click on playlist, and you'll see that there are 3 in ascending chronological order. So here's our class right here, and I've got 1 through 8. So I'll upload number 9 today. And anyway, it takes a while. So, but if you missed any of these classes, you can go back. You can go back anytime. There's no restriction. It's for you, my gift to you. So stop sharing. And
Were you saying that the test was 50 questions, like 50, or 1515?
sorry, 50. 50.
Nice try.
And Stacy, what date was that? When is that test?
It follows the class on Thursday. So
Thursday.
that's the 25th. You have power session 12, 1 to 4 or 4:15, and the test is immediately afterwards. And Bob Seymour from the Buckhead office is going to be teaching session 12. Do not stress. Most of them are logical, common sense. So multiple choice. Okay. Diane, take it away.
Well, thank you. Stacy pointed out while we were on break that when I am sharing the screen, that is all you see. So I apologize. That was probably the most boring screen you've ever seen for like an hour. So my apologies for that. One of the things that we've kind of went through the whole closing process and everything. And sometimes I get a question, do I need to go to the closing? Yes, you need to go to the closing. This is probably the end of the entire process that you have been with your buyer or seller for weeks, sometimes even months, and in some cases years to get to that point. Why on earth would you miss the opportunity to close this deal on a happy note with a gift, with just, taking them out to lunch afterwards, maybe, being there, in case there's any questions? Why would you simply just, cut the rope and let them run adrift at the attorney's office without you? You've gotten them to this point. Why would you not go to the closing? I mean, sometimes there's like with new home construction or something, it's very, cut and dry, but you still want to be there. I mean, you're the reason, they're buying this house, and you need to be there to support them. You need to be there to remind them that you are the one that got them to that point. And this is actually the first step of the rest of your life with these people. At that point, you're putting them on a 33, 36 touch at that point. You're following up. They're on your A list, right? At that point, the best time to get a referral from a client is probably in the week before closing. They're happy, they're excited, they're looking forward to it. Nothing's screwed up yet. So getting a referral, asking them for the referral, whether you want to put it on Zillow or Google or whatever you want to, have it shown up on. The best time to do it is probably the week before. Don't bring a form to closing and say, oh, hey, can you give me a referral? They're not going to remember that. They're walking away from that closing with a pack of papers that high. And it's just going to be one piece of paper, more piece of paper. They're going to stick in that folder. They're going to put it in a drawer when they get home. And, out of sight, out of mind. Beforehand, you can send them an email with a link, with a live link to where they can go and leave a referral, and that seems to work pretty well. Like I said, they're still in a good mood then. Things haven't just fallen apart at the last minute for some reason. Everybody's
more people are promoting Google reviews than Zillow these days. Just
right.
saying.
Exactly. Some people use Yelp. It's kind of, check on Yelp. It's kind of interesting how many people are, leaving reviews on Yelp these days. And hey, if they just want to send you an email and tell you how wonderful you were, don't be shy about using it in your, listing presentations and your buyer, presentations. I mean, it's, you know, that's one of the things that you're hoping to, you know, get out of this entire transaction is a client for life. And they're not a client for life if you forget about them the day after closing or once you've cashed your check. This is when you're putting them on your 36 touches. This is when you're inviting them to your client events. This is when you're picking up the phone. I mean, and I will tell you this, and most agents hate doing it, but it is like gold. Call them a week after the closing. And a lot of people go, oh no, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to hear about this. I don't want to hear about that. But you have no idea how much they appreciate it. You know, they haven't just been, you know, forgotten, you know, having to deal with stuff. This is when you start proving your value to them as far as being able to say, you know, I've got a guy that can work, that can help you on that. I've got a great gal who does, you know, decorating. She can help you pick out a sofa. I've got, you know, hey, I've got this fabulous plumber. You know, he'll be out, you know, I'll call him and he'll be out there, you know, tomorrow. Whatever. You move into a house, you know, the houses are like people. They all have their own little personalities. They all have their faults. They all have their good sides. And not until you move into it and actually start living in the house, you don't really start to know a house. So once they've gotten in there and they started getting to know the house, you know, let's make sure they all stay on good terms during the process, because you want, and calling them a week later is A, you care. B, you're thinking about them as, you know, people and not as, you know, a paycheck. And 3, you do want to help. You really do want to, you know, be a source of information. So if they, you know, from now on, if they need a plumber, you know, they're going to pick up the phone and they're going to call, you know, Kathy or Katrina or Rochelle or Chrissy and say, hey, you know, I need a plumber. Do you know a good guy? Yes, I do. You know, because you've got a vendor list that's, you know, probably 3 pages long, right? Right? Yes. If you don't have one, your market center does. Use that as a basis to start, but, you know, don't be shy about, you know, throwing somebody out you don't like and putting somebody in that you do like. Some agents have that vendor list on their websites. Some, you know, work with some of those vendors to actually get, you know, with sponsorships for different events and different mailings and stuff throughout the year. Others, you know, just, you know, hey, this is a great guy that, you know, or a great gal that, you know, does a quality job, and I know they'll take good care of you because I told them to. You want to be, you want to be the person they think about when they think about real estate, because you're their agent. And you want to stay their agent. You don't want, you know, the agent that lives 5 doors down in their new neighborhood, you know, to come calling with brownies and going, hi, welcome to the neighborhood. I'm an agent. Here's my card. And don't you know what happens? But, you know, you stay top of mind, and, you know, it's really crazy because about, let's see, where's that number? It blows my mind, because if you spend all that time trying to get, you spend all that time creating a relationship with them, and then when you drop them right after closing, I mean, honestly, 72% of them aren't going to remember your name unless you put it in front of them, mindfully, purposefully, and you know, with a sense of truth behind it, you know, that you do care about them. Yeah, 72% of people, when they buy a house, they use a different agent than the one that they bought the house with. You know, when you consider that most people buy and sell houses anywhere between, you know, 6 and 10 years now these days, I think it is. You know, to forget this person that, you know, took you to hell and back through a closing, and to forget their name and not even remember, oh, God, I wonder if she's still doing real estate, you know? Well, yeah, because they're getting cards from you like every quarter. They're getting phone calls from you, you know, every 6 months. I mean, they're getting, you know, they're getting a Christmas card or a Christmas ornament. They're getting, you know, a lottery ticket for St. Patrick's Day. They're getting a Valentine. They're getting, you know, they're getting remembered. If you can remember we've got a system where we put in the anniversary date of their home purchase for buyers. And it's in a program called Send Out Cards, but there are a lot of other ones too. But we have a custom card in Send Out Cards that acknowledges the first anniversary of their new house and sends them brownies. It says, celebrate your anniversary, blah, blah, blah. It kind of, and then that's just like, it just goes out automatically. We don't even think about it. We put the date in there and just, it just goes out a year. And then a year later on, they call us back and they go, oh, I can't remember. I can't believe you remember that. And it was like, yeah, of course I did. So it's just one of those touches that, like, oh yes, I remember you, I value you, you are valuable to me in, growing my business. So the sincerity does come through, and it does help you build your business, because I think like one of the cardinal sins of being an agent is, not following up with your closings after they've happened. As you can tell, I feel pretty passionately about that. Most of my business is client care and figuring out ways in order to keep us top of mind in front of these clients. And people will ask me, do I need to bring a closing gift? Gosh, I've been working for them. Why do I have to give them a present? Well, you don't have to. Some people do, some people don't. And somebody says, well, how much should I spend for a closing gift? Well, I saw one agent, she likes to make jam. This is her thing. She makes strawberry jams and blackberry jams. She's, during the summer, she does all these fruits and she has all these old jars and she hand makes jams. And so she brings them to closing. That's her closing gift. It comes in a little bag. It's adorable. Other people give a magazine subscription. If they're new to Atlanta, they give them a subscription to Atlanta Magazine for a year, so they can kind of go through that and go, oh, that every month they get it. It's like, oh yeah, I remember, Diane sent that to me. That's cool. Some people go all out. If you're working in the luxury market, your price point for your thank yous tend to be a little higher. Tiffany's has a great program for the luxury agents where they have a discount for some of the more popular things like wine glasses and things like that. Google it. There's a zillion places that are happy to take your money for closing gifts. Whether you personalize them or not, it's another story. I mean, that's completely up to you. Some agents do, some agents don't. Right now, it seems like one of the popular gifts are those charcuterie boards, that wooden board that you can just put all this cute little foods on. That seems to be popular, especially if it's like in a farmhouse style or something like that, or something that kind of goes with the house. A personalized welcome mat. And actually, one of my favorite closing gifts, I mean, it's like the cheapest thing in the world, but it's the one that always gets the most oohs and ahs, is if they've got a new dog tag with their new address on it. You go to Walmart, you do it for $3 there at that little kiosk going out the door, and it has Fido, my address is, and call my owner. Here's the number. I mean, and I tie it to like their gift bag, with a bow. I mean, forget the wine, forget all the stuff I put in the bag. That little tag, it's like, oh, wow. I mean, they probably wondered why I asked what their dog's name was, but it's part of the process. So it's just little things like that, that you were paying attention and that you care. Any questions? Anybody ever seen like a really cool closing gift that they'd like to share?
When we bought, hi Dan, this is Sandra Stewart.
Hi.
When we bought our house in Kansas, our realtor gave us a yearly subscription to a local zoo. And it was the nicest gift she could have given us, because it was a gift of spending time together as a family. And we used it so much. It was the most thoughtful gifts that we could got.
Love it. What would be like an equivalent around here for something like that?
I don't know, like Gibbs Gardens subscription, depending on where they live or
Oh,
things like that.
I went to Gibbs Gardens last week. It was
Yeah.
gorgeous. Did anybody been up to Gibbs Gardens? It is amazing. They've got about 28 million daffodils and they're all in bloom right now. It is absolutely glorious.
How do you spell that, Diane? You say Gibbs?
Gibbs, Gibbs.
Oh, Gibbs. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if you see the trucks running around from Gibbs Landscaping, the guy that owns Gibbs Landscaping owns this 300-acre parcel up in Ball Ground. And it is, if you're a garden person, it is just mind-blowing what he's done with this 300 acres. His wife liked daffodils, so they started planting daffodils 30 years ago. And daffodils propagated and they got bigger and bigger, and now he's got 28 million of them.
There was some movie that they filmed up there with Jennifer Gardner and her daughter was sick, like terminally sick, and she fell out of a tree, but they had like a dream sequence at the end and it was filmed in Gibbs Garden.
I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
Cool. I mean, they've got the daffodils in the spring, they've got the roses in the fall, they've got the Japanese garden, I mean, the rhododendrons, the azalea. I mean, it's just amazing. Be that as it may, that would be a good one. That would certainly win me over. There's some checklists in your books. There's a buyer agent contract to close checklist, and there's a listing agent contract to close checklist because the responsibilities are a little bit different on either side. Pretty much all this stuff is in here that we've talked about over the last hour. I'm not going to go over it again because that's boring. What I am going to do is I'm going to show you a checklist that I use to kind of keep me on track as far as what's going where. And so I'm going to see if I can share this. Bear with me. Did I lose you? Pull up here. All right, this is a simple Google list. I mean, it's a Google spreadsheet. You could use an Excel spreadsheet. It just happens that the person I work with on this one, she prefers Google because she can get to it from her phone. She can get to it on a computer. She can get to it from anywhere. On the left-hand side, you have like the titles, name, address, co-op agent, blah, blah, blah. And then I've got like the names of of my client, John Smith, Carol Jones. For example, Wingo Street, you see this little thing right here, the little black triangle? That means that I've put more information in it. So I've got, let's see, Norcross, Georgia, 30071. For example, at Campbell and Brannon, if I go over that, I've got who the attorney is, I've got the processor, I've got the address, the telephone number. For the lender, in this case, it was all cash, but in this case, it was Shane at Silverton Mortgage. I've got his email, and I've got all that information like right there, but it's not like spread all over the place, so you can't see anything. Buyer's name, seller's name, closing date, when they sign. You know, this one's signing a little early. Got what time they're closing, what the purchase price is. You know, that'll change back and forth a little bit. Then down here, I've got their binding date, because we all know everything starts with the binding date, right? When the EM was due, I need to get a copy from the builder on this one. Due diligence, well, there wasn't one on this one because it's the builder, but this one had a due diligence period. They had waived the appraisal, so there was no appraisal deadline. It was an all cash deal, so I was just verifying funds. In this case, these two are getting an FHA loan. I've got, when I put the contract in command, and this particular agent likes to have a copy of the contract in Google because they like to be able to access it quickly on their phone. So, I'll also put it in Google for her to, be able to access if she's on the road or something like that quickly. You can do it in command. It's just that she is not as comfortable in command as she is in Google right now. So we're kind of, we're doing it both ways because we have to do it to submit them to the offices. We have a little form that we send that's called important dates. This is really convenient because it puts everybody on the same page. What's an important date? Binding date. When is your earnest money due? When is your due diligence over? When is your inspection? If you know it when you're filling it out, you put it all. There's actually a form in GAR that's called important dates. You can use that. I've got my own. It's kind of a little calendar. It's got little colored colors all over it because I like colors. And then you're giving information to both parties, like here's the name of the lender and here's how to contact them. Here's the name of the closing attorney. Here's how to contact them. Here's the different agents, their contact information. I don't put the contact information in there for the buyers or the sellers. I just don't. And then at the bottom, I also put like notes from the contract, like includes pool table, washer and dryer. Buyer is contributing $3,000 in closing costs. It just kind of jog everybody's memory that that's what's going to be happening. Have the earnest money due. So I go through here and just kind of go through and check them off as they go, or if they don't apply, I keep going. But I've asked for the utilities. I've asked for, I go into FMLS and Georgia MLS if I'm the seller to update it to make sure it's showing under contract. Here's a hint: if you are the buyer and the seller's kind of dragging their feet, putting the house on the, showing the house as being under contract, you can send them a note. You can send FMLS a notice of contract. I think it's called a 117. You can do it online. You use that FMLS, go to 117, just shoot it through, and it says, "Hi, I'm the buyer. I'm on the buyer side of this. It's under contract." And then they send a notice to the listing agent. Goes, "Oh, okay. I guess I better change it." Sometimes they just don't get around to changing it because they're hoping for more, showings or whatever. That's something that you can do or not do. It just kind of depends. Did you send a copy of the contract to the attorney? Did you send a copy of the contract to the lender? That kind of stuff. Usually it's the buyer's agent's responsibility, but if you're the lender, if you're the listing agent, sure, why not? Give them a call and say, did you get the package? Just to make sure it was all done. Get the utilities. Where are they going to have to be getting their electricity from? Where have they be getting their water from? If you are the listing agent, ask your seller to postpone changing their water for about 5 days, only because in several of the counties around here, they cannot set up an account for their water until they have closed and they have a settlement statement. And you don't get a settlement statement until closing day. And then if you're moving in that night and then the sellers have turned off the water that day, you don't have any water for like 4 or 5 days. And that is awful. So as a courtesy, because what goes around comes around. Give them about 5 days in order to do that, because if they close on a Friday, they're not going to be able to do it until Monday. So if they get shut off on Friday, I mean, they are going like several days without water, which is kind of rude. So, then I've got, a closing, a walkthrough schedule. Usually I try to do a walkthrough like the morning of closing. Sometimes I have to do it the night before. Ideally when the seller is gone and moved out already. If you've got like a temporary occupancy, doing that walkthrough may seem a little not worth it because, well, they're all there and they're all packing, so you really can't see. But, it's nice to know if, the, washer and dryer, leaked and the water came through the flooring and leaked into the bed, the bedroom below. It's nice to know if the dishwasher, if it's running and all of a sudden there's like a puddle of water, right? These things, if there's a hole, in the wall that wasn't there beforehand, if the glass got broken when the movers were taking stuff out. I mean, these are all things that you just kind of, and you're also checking to make sure any repairs that were agreed to, are done. So these are all kind of things. And then this is not really like your last chance to come back to the seller and go, Mr. Seller, who's fixing that, gouged hole in the stairwell that the dresser made as they were, taking it down the stairs? That's the kind of stuff that kind of gets settled quickly at the closing table. Sometimes they'll just give you cash, just to do it or something like that. But just, things that, matter, if you're moving in and you've got painters coming the next day, can we please get this fixed before, the painters come? That sort of thing. You have to take out your sign, within a certain number of days after closing. I think it's like 7 days. FMLS requires it, although it's a courtesy to have it removed the day of closing. Most people, when they move into a house, they don't want somebody else to sign out in the front door. You're bringing the keys to closing. You're bringing, sometimes you're bringing the garage door openers, but often you'll have the sellers leave the garage door openers, extra keys, instruction books to appliances and stuff. Have them leave it in the kitchen in a drawer or on top of the counter, when they're leaving. So you're putting them. This one had 3 amendments, so we're just making sure we're tracking all the amendments. I have a couple of places for check-ins with lenders and things like that. So kind of remind me as we're going through the process. Then sending out thank yous. There's a note down here that says thank you card to client, thank you card to agent. I really don't know how to emphasize this enough, guys, but everybody's got a list of agents they love to work with and agents they will never work with ever again. Don't be that agent. We're all playing in the same sandbox, and there might be 25,000 agents in the Atlanta metro area, but not all of them are working full-time. Not all of them are engaged in real estate, from 8 o'clock in the morning until, midnight. They, having a good relationship with the agent on the other side, you're going to run into them again. I mean, the sandbox is not that big, guys. And if you're ever on Facebook, that, a bad experience, people are very happy to tell you what a bad experience they had. They might not use a name, but all of a sudden, people start picking up the phone and it's like, who was that? Who was that? Or they can, kind of figure it out from FMLS. It's, yeah, I mean, it's be professional, be nice, be the grown-up. I mean, sometimes you're the only grown-up in the room. The buyers are at the seller's throats. The sellers are ticked off because, they feel like the buyer wants, all that and a stick of butter. The listing agent's going AWOL because she's on vacation and she left somebody else to handle it. She'll be back next month. See you later. Be the grown-up in the room. I mean, it's, keeping your temper, keeping your voice level, keeping it professional goes a long way to diffusing a lot of situations. I have a lot of, every phone call I end up with a client, my last words are, all right, here's the next step. Or here's what happens next, because they can only focus very narrowly on what you're telling them. And plus they've got a lot of other things going on in the background that they're just not, they are distracting them. But if you tell them, okay, we finished due diligence, the next thing we have to concentrate on is your appraisal. So let's make sure, and just kind of, you always have the next step. There's always another step. After this, I'm going to call, you need to call your lender. After this, we need to talk to your mom that's giving you, your down payment, and make sure that she has, sent a copy of it to, there's all this stuff that you're always on top of because you're the professional, you're the grown up, and that's why you get paid what you do. It's real easy when a seller is upset to get upset for them. And it happens. I mean, you're mad, they're mad, they're upset. Nobody makes good decisions when they're mad, right? I mean, we all have said and made really stupid things when, we're angry or, things weren't going the way we had thought they were going to go. But it's kind of our job to be the adult in the room. And sometimes that's harder than others. But when you get with a co-op agent that is just a joy to work with, they're on top of things. They send you something when they say they're going to. They respond when you send them a text. They respond when you send them an email. Somebody on their team is responding to you. They're being proactive. They're telling you there's a problem. Those are the kind of agents that go on Santa Claus's nice list. And I mean, when you're doing your closings, I mean, thank the agent. I mean, I had one agent one time, it was a $5 Starbucks card. Okay, guys, I mean, $5. But it came in a card saying, thank you so much. It was a joy working with you, blah, blah, blah. Whether it was or not, I don't know, but she gave me this card with a thank you note. And I was just like totally charmed. And am I going to remember her next time? Absolutely. If I see her coming in to see one of my listings, hey Deb, I'm so glad you're coming to see one of my listings, or Valentina, thanks so much for showing, what's your story? I mean, develop a relationship with as many agents as you can, not just in your office, but all over the city. Because you're going to run into them, somewhere along in your career. I mean, I've got a couple of agents on the not so nice list. For various reasons, but just two. the rest of them you can figure it out as you go along. But you're not only developing your relationship with your client, but you're also developing your relationship with other agents. You don't want to be the agent when somebody sees you signed up for a closing, go or signed up for a show and go okay, because or they call you, 3,000 times during a transaction whining because it's, well, my seller wasn't expecting to have to do this and blah, 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 blah. So, I understand. And moving on. So, or the agent that just goes AWOL. I mean, they write the contract, they never respond to a single, email or telephone or text. And they show up at closing wearing, jeans, t-shirt, flip-flops, and on their way to the beach, pick up the check. And it's like, I might send their sellers a nice little note afterwards, thanking them so much. Anyway, I might not. So, we've had cases where. I remember Cynthia got a phone call one day, and this couple had this house over in Smyrna, and she goes, "You don't remember us?" And Cynthia was like, she's really good with her clients, but she was kind of like, "Name sounds familiar, but yeah, yes." And they had been on the other side of the table. They were the sellers, and she was representing the buyers, but their agent had mishandled it so badly, and she walked in with a small gift for her clients. She was pleasant during closing, she wasn't glaring, she wasn't sitting back and glaring at them, and just she was engaged, and conversation was and everything. And they remembered her name 5 years later when they were selling their next house and wanted her to represent them. I mean, that is amazing when you think about it, because we certainly weren't contacting them. They certainly weren't on our 33 touch. They weren't getting anything from us because they were somebody else's client. But because she was professional and kind and easy to work with, I mean, they remembered. People remember. They're like elephants. Any comments? Anybody had any like really great experiences at a closing that they'd like to share? Oh dear, everybody's had awful closings.
Well, this group is pretty much new.
Right, but yeah, some people have gone through closings from their own personal standpoint too.
Oh, well, I did.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, I did. But I wasn't there at the table only because guess what? I was in real estate class.
Well, there you go. That's one of the best excuses.
And they loved it though. They spoke for me and I had an attorney on my behalf. So, but it was good. I got my paperwork right back and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect. I had one client who had a power of attorney, and for some reason he had a power of attorney that was going to be at the closing. And then when I walked in, I got that little sidebar, we haven't gotten the money yet. And it's like, what? And so I'm trying to call him. He's not answering his phone. And finally I got hold of him, about 20 minutes later. He goes, what? He goes, I'm at such and such amusement park up in New Hampshire. And I'm like, they didn't get your money. He goes, they haven't gotten your money. Where's your money? He goes, well, I talked to the banker yesterday. And I said, did you wire it? And he goes, I told her to. So I'm calling the banker and she goes, he never signed the papers. I can't just, send money willy-nilly. And so I'm sitting here at a closing, there's no money. And, thank God the other agent was, understanding, and, we ended up closing an escrow. So, I mean, it all worked out, but it was just for 2 days. It was just, I think I lost like 10 pounds because it was just, the guy just had no sense of urgency. I mean, you think, when you're, buying a, $500,000 condo in, Midtown, you might, give it more than a passing thought, but I guess not,
And this was a client of yours. This was a client, a buyer on the buyer side. Oh, wow.
Yep. And I thought I'd done everything right, but he just decided to kind of go AWOL. So it's going to happen. How you handle it, however, is whether or not you're a professional or whether you're not. Could I have started screaming at him on the phone in front of all the other people at closing? No, I went to the next room going, where are you? And, I'm not his mother, I'm his agent. So at that point, he kind of needed a keeper, but that's another story.
So at the same time that he didn't know that he was supposed to show up, or you thought he was
coming?
He
knew he wasn't showing up. We had we had somebody with power of attorney, but he was supposed to send the money.
Correct.
I mean, this was not his first house. I mean, he owned like 3 other houses around the country. So anyway, so once you finished your closing, once everybody walks away happy, you're adding them to your database, for follow-up, moving forward. If they have a business or something that you can feature, like in a on your website or marketing or something like that, it's really nice to be able to come back to them and say, hey, can I feature your business? Like we have people who do home businesses like making candles or things like that, just kind of putting them out there as, like, hey, I've got a client who does this, it's really cool. And it's just, they appreciate the mention. You can do it on Facebook, you can do it, on your blog or whatever you want, or wherever you want to, but just something that shows that you appreciate them and you want to support them too. I'm going to kind of go through some of the stuff with Command. I know Command right now to you guys is kind of a vague thing. Some of you How many of you have been in command and been kind of putting in contacts and stuff like that? Can I get a show of hands? Okay, so you've been in command. Anybody put a contract in command as far as, going through the process of, submitting it to the, okay, a couple of you. I'm just going to go through it. I'm not going to go through it step by step because you're not going to remember it until you actually do it. But I am kind of going to hit the high points of it so you can kind of say, oh, yeah, I think I was, at least maybe in the back of your mind, you'll remember, oh, yeah, she mentioned that in contract to close. So I'm going to share that.
Diane, while you're sharing, is it possible that we could get your template for the checklist? Of course, without any of the contact information
Just the
for your
form?
client.
I'll send it to Stacy and she can send it out to you guys.
Thank you.
That's no problem. Let's see. Where are you? Okay, so this basically you can't put a contract in unless you have a you can't put a contract in unless you have a contact. So the first thing you do is you put the person in. So y'all are pretty much familiar with that process, building your database in command. In this case, it's a gal, her name is Shanti Mogali. And she is, go away. Okay. She has a property over in Decatur called Snapfinger Manor. Now you could come over here to, just under this bar, I can't really see it from my bar, but there's this thing that says create opportunities. But right now you can see that she has one opportunity and it's called Snapfinger Manor. So I've clicked on that. Otherwise, I could just go to opportunities and create an opportunity. But you can also do it from the contact screen too. Sometimes that's easier because you have to make sure that person's in there anyway. So while you're there, just go ahead and create the contact. You'll notice that they'll put in the person's name, like they'll put Shanti Mogali /buyer or Shanti Mogali -seller. I change it so that it's the opportunity name includes the address right here and the name of the buyer or the seller, simply because that is how mostly the MCA's office is going to try to look it up if something comes up. They'll put in the address and that will pop up. Otherwise, I mean, it'll eventually pop up the other way, but this way you kind of see, you can see the transactions. You also have to put the property in here under property, which a lot of people kind of forget because they put it over here, especially if it's a seller. They've already put it over here under the contract, so they think it's already in there. But you always have to put the property that's under contract in the property section down there. Seller profile will have, if they were registered with your command for like looking at properties and stuff. I personally haven't used that to its fullest extent, so that's probably something to explore on the consumer platform with Keller Williams. However, the one thing you are going to be using a lot in opportunities are documents. Now, several different schools of thought on this one. Some people are
Diane,
yeah.
Could you just click on where the residential drop down? Because the first time you get to this page, it's pretty much blank. Over to the left, residential, the word residential. Okay, there's going to be it's instead of residential, it's going to say pick checklist, and you have the choice of residential or commercial.
Right. Okay.
So,
yeah, you have to set it up with the expectation it's going to be a residential, unless you're a commercial agent, in which case it's commercial. But when you set it up for residential, it kicks in a menu that you use, for residential purchases. And for example, in this case, it's asking for a listing agreement. You've got three different things over here. You've got your listed. This is where your seller's listing agreement goes. You've got your under contract, which is where all the contract documents go. And then you've got your closed, which is where goes all the closing documents go. So just very basically, you're listed, you're looking at your listing agreement, your F-101, your affiliated marketing disclosure, and your wire fraud disclosure. Your Market Center's compliance broker would really love to have the legal description in there, which is a warranty deed. You can get the warranty deed through, if it's in Cobb County, you can just get it through the Cobb County website, which is really nice. But most people just call their sponsoring attorneys in Dunwoody, it's Gannett, and other offices have different ones, but they usually have like a hotline or an email that you can just send it saying, I need a legal description for 123 Main Street. And within an hour or two, they'll pop it back to you, you'll have it. And you can include that as part of your listing agreement. So then it's got the seller's disclosure that they're filling out, the community association disclosure they're filling out, a lead-based paint disclosure they're filling out. Now, these are things that a seller would typically fill out for you prior to going onto market, right? So, all that kind of goes in there. In this case, I didn't get a seller's property disclosure from her because it was a rental thing that she'd had, that she hadn't lived in like 15 years. So she just, she wouldn't do one. So she did fill out a community association one, but it didn't go in here because this one actually never went live. It sold like 3 times before I could ever get it to market. So all that's in there, and then you can submit it to your MCA just as hey, I've got a new listing. So here you can also, if there's something in here that's not that you want to put in here that's not listed, you can always add an item. You just click on add an item, what the document name is. What type it is. I mean, is it, sometimes I just put contract or authorization or whatever. I mean, because that one to me is a little vague. But then it'll add it to the bottom of your list down here. So you can see it, it says other or something like that. A lot of people will do a custom folder over here on the side, and they'll add, right here, add a new custom folder. And this is where they'll put all the inspection documents. So if you're a buyer and you've had an inspection, you can put the inspection in here. You can put receipts in here. It's a great place to kind of keep everything in one place. There's a lot of people that don't use paper files anymore. I'm one of them. I haven't used a paper file in probably 3 years. I used to have a 6-part file folder. Each part had like its own little use. The front part had the listing, the second part had the contract, the third part had inspection results, fourth part had marketing, fifth part had lending, the last part had whatever agreement there was. I mean, it was just like bang, 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 bang. But the more I started using Command, the more I realized that I didn't need it, because I could put everything in Command and it was always right there, and I could access it from just about anywhere. So I've kind of gotten away from paper folders. However, there are a lot of people that love to have that folder in their hot little hands the entire time and will never let go of it. I mean, you have to pry it out of their dead hands because they just like paper. If that's the case, then I would really kind of urge you to treat the folder professionally, label it, don't have like scribbling all over it, because it's something that your client sees. And the more put together it is, the more professional you seem. It isn't just papers just kind of shoved into a folder that you're kind of flipping through. Have a system for it. I mean, there are some agents that have a book. It's like a 1-inch binder, and they get those like 1 through 30 dividers that they have, like supposedly for calendars. But at the beginning of the book, each little section has its own thing. Like number 1 is the buyer brokerage. Number 2 is, this, it's like every single thing is in there. way beyond my patience level. But, you know, if you are a very, very, very high C, that, you know, that would just make you the happiest camper in the world. Most agents are not high Cs. I mean, if you've taken a DISC profile, most agents are, you know, probably running Ds and Is, you know, are pretty high. Their Cs and S's are kind of low. Occasionally you get one that has a really high C.
Huh? I'm hearing everybody keep talking about the high C and the high D. Where do we take the DISC personality profile test?
Check with your team leader or assistant team leader and ask them, or your productivity coach, and ask them to.
It's on the Tony Robbins website.
Yeah, and it's on the Tony Robbins website too. That one they've changed that one. It's not as thorough as it used to be. The free one used to be pretty thorough, but it kind of gives you an idea, you know, if you want to do it. But if you take it through the office, and they can kind of sit down with you and kind of go over it with you, and kind of, it doesn't tell you if you're going to be a good agent or a bad agent. It just tells you what kind of agent.
You know what's crazy? I don't really believe in those things. I'm just curious because I know people change on a day-to-day basis. I might be a C today and a D tomorrow, but I'm just curious to know how it works.
Okay, well, no, yeah, absolutely. Check with the productivity coach. Yeah, check with your assistant team leader or team leader, and you know they'll fix you up with one. I mean, it's, if nothing else, it would be amusing. So
it is amusing because I did mine and it doesn't sound anything like me at all.
Well, when I did mine, my C was 97%, which probably isn't surprising considering what I do. But it doesn't define you. It just kind of, it's just a kind of a handle to kind of, you know, see like, okay, what if type things might come up. But at least it's quick. I mean, the KPA is like, you know, 45 minutes long. So that one's a bear. But it's very thorough too. So anyway, back to the creating a new folder. You can do a custom folder that you can just dump a lot of stuff in here. There's spaces in here like for like a survey and stuff like that. But you know, anything that doesn't fit into like a little line on your listed or under contract, you know, you fix a custom folder. Some people even put photos in there. You know, if they've got a listing, they just put all the folders, you know, they just put all the pictures in their custom folder. It's just an easy place to store them. And, you know, they're not taking up room on your drive. They're not taking up room on your computer. So, yeah, because once the listing is over, we've all got these folders in our computer that are like 5 years old of houses you don't even remember anymore. But, you know, ooh, do I throw it away? No, I don't want to throw it away because I paid a lot of money for these pictures, and what do I do with them? So guess what? Command gets to hold them now. So, so there's a lot of things that Command, you know, can hold for you here. So once you're listed and once you go under contract, then you start getting copies of earnest money checks or the receipts for earnest or whatever, a copy of the counter offer. You do have to split these out, and people get annoyed with that because they tend to work with big PDF files that have everything all lined up together. And they come to Command, they go, oh gosh, I've got to split it all up. Well, there's lots of things that'll do that for you. There's free websites. I use PDF to go, which you know, you put a file in there and you just tell it where you want it split up, and it'll split it up, and it's free and it's quick. Stacy, did Command add a feature like that somewhere? I thought I saw that somewhere.
Well, it's available through DocuSign.
Right, DocuSign, yeah.
But if you receive, let me check on that. If you receive.
Yeah, if you get one.
Right, you're the listing agent, because that's.
Yeah. Yeah, PDF to go or any other PDF splitter, you know, will work great, just to kind of split them up so you can put them in these different ones. Although, to be honest, if I've got a new construction contract, those things are like 30 pages long, and none of them fit into these little cubby holes that we have on these things. I just put that all in purchase and sale and put a note on it saying, entire contract here. I couldn't split it up. And the compliance broker usually goes, yeah, I know, fine. Yeah, because they know that they're looking at something different here rather than just your typical purchase and sale agreement. So then what's going to happen is that you're going to, let me see if I can minimize this. Once you put all these things in here, you're going to submit them. Now, see, this one's already been submitted, so you can't really, click on it. It won't let you click on it again because you've already submitted it, and it was approved by the broker. However, if there had been an issue with any of these, like lead-based paint wasn't signed on line 9, which is the famous one, there'll be a little conversation bubble there, and then you click on it and it will tell you that you're not going to get paid until this is fixed. So this is one of those things you just kind of have to go through and figure it out. Once they're submitted, then once you have your listing agreement in there or your buyer brokerage, whatever side you're on, and once you're under contract, then you're going to be going to offers and commissions. This is where it sometimes doesn't make sense sometimes, because you're like, oh, I've only got the one. I don't have a lot of offers. I've only just got the one offer, or I'm only making the one offer. But you do have to put it in here because this sets the stage for the rest of the transaction for the MCA. It tells them the finance amount, the earnest money, the offer, the names, all that stuff is in there. Like I could add a new offer if I wanted to here, and I could create another one that's like second offer. And this kind of gives you an idea of the things that they're asking, the version name, the offer date, the close date, just the parties, the buyer, the seller, the agents, everything is just kind of a thumbnail version of the contract. So once you've done all that, then you can view commission, which is going over here. And this is where you're telling them like how much money you're making, when's it closing, when the contract date was, how much money is being taken out for maybe KW Cares, or how much is going to the office for your split to the office, that sort of thing. Offices are usually pretty good at keeping up with your cap, so that, for example, if you have a transaction that you might be having to pay $3,000 to the house, but only 1,000 of it is needed for you to cap, then you only have to pay 1,000. You get the other 2. They're very good at keeping up with that. But it's also your money, so it'd be a good idea for you to keep up with it too. Notes are things that just if you had any information on this file that the MCA needed to know, like buyer is John Jones, mother is giving down payment or something like that. Just notes to yourself, notes to the MCA, whatever. And then you just submit it to, once it's submitted here under commissions, it's going to be hard for you to change it. You have to kind of go through the MCA to change it, to make sure that she's got the correct information and why she has it. So that's basically it. Once it goes in, if there's any issues, it'll come back with a little red thing up here that tells you that you got an issue. So right now I don't have any notifications, but it would tell you that, oh, you've got a problem on this file, and you click on it and it takes you right to it, so you can kind of see what the issue is. So that's kind of cool. So that's kind of basically it. Anybody have any questions about this part of Command? I know it's kind of I kind of threw a lot at you at one time, but I just kind of wanted to give you an overview rather than a step-by-step that you're not going to remember down the road.
It's helpful. Diane, do you have an example of one for a buyer? Because this one is a seller, right?
Right.
Can we see one for a buyer?
Let me see. Let's see. Opportunities here. No, most of mine are listings, it looks like. I think this was a sample. Let's see. About opportunities here. Not most of mine are listings, it looks like. I think this was a sample. Let's see. About opportunities here. Most of mine are listings, it looks like. I think this was a sample. Let's see. About opportunities here. Not most of mine are listings, it looks like. I think this was a sample. But it didn't go any further. Now, all mine were listings. Sorry, I don't have an example, but the only thing that's different is that under the documents, you've got like a pick. This is where you pick the checklist type. And it was residential or commercial, residential. And it was a consultation instead of a listing. So here is where the buyer brokerage agreement went in, the affiliated marketing disclosure, and the wire fraud. After that, the under contract is the same and the closed is the same. Closed is where when you get back from closing, you put the settlement statement in to Command so that the MCA has access to it and can pay you. And the DA here is what the office produces. It's called a disbursement authorization that details all the money in this transaction as far as you're concerned. Any referral amounts that you're making that have to go out, any money to the house, any money that you're paying to KW Cares, money that you're paying to FMLS. You all know that both sides of the transaction have to pay FMLS, right? Is that news to anybody? Okay. A lot of times people are surprised. I mean, they know the listing agent does, but they're surprised when the buyer does too. They're like, wait, what? Why do I have to pay it? This is also where terminations go. And also, if you are having to do a 118, some offices require it, some offices don't. All this, this is all like closing and termination information. It doesn't go under contract because at that point it's not under contract anymore. It's closed or terminated. So under contract, it's the exact same as the other one. Copy the earnest money, counteroffer, purchase and sale. Amendments. DeKalb County Plumbing, referral information. If you do have a referral from another agent, please go ahead and get their W-9 from their office, early, and you're not scrambling for it at the last minute, because we have to report that as income to that office in the office taxes. So they're not going to be able to send the referral until they have the W-9, and your referring agent might get a little irate if they have to wait a couple of months for that. I know I would. So that's just kind of one thing if you have someone who has been kind enough to send you a referral, that's one of the things about being a good referral agent is, making sure that they get paid promptly and on time. Any other questions about Command?
Wait, just quick question with the W-9, if I'm sending out a referral.
Go ahead and send the W-9 from your office, with it, because that's being proactive and it's just giving them everything they need up front. And usually that's in a place where you can get to it very quickly. Some people have them in their documents. Some offices have them in their documents. Some of them just have them in a drive that people can access. Check with your MCA and see where your W-9 is in your office. And it'll just say like Keller Williams, Peachtree Road, and then it'll have their tax ID number and it's signed by the MCA. It's pretty basic.
I'm confused.
Anything else? Okay, let's stop sharing this because it's hard to read anyway. I really wish they'd used a darker color on that ink, don't you? Okay, so kind of went through the Command, kind of went through my little checklist that I've got. Talked about keeping things in folders versus not keeping them in folders. You kind of saw my timeline. It's pretty basic. I've seen some timelines. You can actually put timelines in Command that remind you. They're called, I think it's called timeline. But you can, in each section, you can make up your own timeline. So if you wanted to keep track of it, it'll like automatically remind you that something is due or something is, needs attention or something like that. They're pretty handy. I have not used them as much as I would like, because I think they're probably a great resource. It's just that I've been working with agents who really like Google Sheets, and so right now that's kind of what we're sticking with. If you're looking at all this going, oh, I have no desire whatsoever to do any of this, I'm hiring a transaction coordinator the minute we hang up with this class. Check with your offices. I think some of you may have been aware that the Rawls Group is rolling out a help desk that will include transaction coordination. So that might be one of the first places you check. Another place might be there's lots of transaction coordinating companies around town. Some are better than others. Get referrals, get people that you've heard of that you liked. And unless you're close, I mean, you're probably not going to be looking to hire one full time as an employee until you're doing, probably between, I think, Stacey, what is it? What's the suggestion? Over 25 a year, or is it over 30 or something like that? Transactions. We lost Stacey. Okay.
I was unmuted and then I muted again.
Okay. So I think the suggestion is that
I mean, you can say 25. Everybody has different opinions.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, some people some people never use a transaction coordinator because they are loath to let that much control out of their hands, and that's fine. But again, leverage. You've only got so much time in a day, and you can either spend it, generating business. You can spend it maintaining your business. But you're not going to grow unless you're doing some kind of lead generation at some point.
So Diane, do you use a transaction coordinator?
I am not a full-time agent right now. I'm actually a transaction coordinator, kind of a half and half for one agent, and the other agent I work for has a full-time transaction coordinator. But yeah, they do 45 listings. They do 45 transactions a year.
Okay.
I personally don't want to do 90 transactions a year. So no, I don't. I mean, that's the high C in me. I don't like to let go of it, but then I'm not doing money. I mean, I may only do like a couple of transactions a year, from friends, but everything else is run through my teams. So yeah, I'm not really a good example as far as that goes. But check with successful agents in your office. Ask them who handles their transactions. They may have an assistant that does them, and in addition to their marketing and their client care. Everybody kind of runs their business a little differently. Keller Williams encourages us to do that. So there's no one right way to do it, but any way that lets you have the time to grow your business is probably a good way. But I think it's 4 o'clock, so we got another 15 minutes. I think the one thing I really want to emphasize here is that this, when you close with somebody, you really are creating a client for life. This is the beginning, just like Casablanca says, it's the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And sometimes it seems very daunting to keep up with people that are behind you, so to speak, taken care of, done. But, these people are going to be shaping your business for years to come. You really cannot, I just cannot emphasize how important it is to maintain contact with these people, because these are people who know you, they like you, and they will probably refer you if they remember your name. And don't assume, unless they're your sister, your brother, your mom, your dad, don't assume that they're going to remember your name, because how many agents are there in Atlanta? 25,000 in various states I think there's about 42,000 in the whole state of Georgia, but most of them are here in Atlanta. So, you've got a lot of competition out there, and there's a lot. Everybody gets the postcards and the letters and everything else in their mailbox, and whether they look at it and read it and it hits them at just the right point when they're thinking about selling it, or whether they get it and they remember, like, oh, I don't need this. Katrina's my agent, or Sally's my agent. I don't have to worry about this, and they just toss it, which is kind of where you're going on this. Anybody have any questions on follow up with clients?
No, I just want to add kind of what you were talking about. So the first real estate agent that we've kind of got in touch with as a family that sold us our house has become a lifelong friend. And she's actually somebody that I look up to. I mean, she lives in Kansas. I've referred friends to her because we're a military family. So she had 2 more transactions. She sold us our house. We bought a house from her. She sold our house. And then I referred a couple of friends to her. So, but she's been really somebody that has kept in touch with us throughout the years. It's been almost 10 years. And we still talk every now and then. And she still sends us, email or text messages or whatever. So I think that's very important what you said about keeping in touch with our clients over the years.
I mean, Command makes it easy. I mean, for a lot of these aspects, for example, you can set them up on a neighborhood, just on the neighborhood watch. People love, when they've bought into a neighborhood, they're kind of looking to see what the other houses are selling for. I mean, they're curious. I mean, we all want to know what the house next door sold for. You can set them up on go ahead and set them up on a neighborhood share so they can see, what the activity in the neighborhood is.
Can you see what I'm sharing?
Yeah, I can see it.
So here is a post-closing follow-up plan. I'm going to view the steps. Interaction.
There's that delay with the phone call, 5 days.
Delay and then send a text. Delay, send an email, and they have email templates which you can change. And this is where they talk about asking for a review. And then here's the touch, send a gift card, And so, and then you would add to here, MNN is monthly neighborhood nurture. So this covers 25 days from the date of closing. And, as long as your contact is complete with phone, email, and their new home address, put them on it. And this is already being used by 28,000 KW agents. 28,000. Do we think it's a highly rated one? I think so.
And if those timelines don't work for you, you can adjust them, right?
Correct.
Exactly. I mean, if you'd rather follow up like 3 days after closing. I know what I wanted to say. When y'all are writing contracts, like as buyer when you're representing the buyer and writing a contract, there's a clause that is like gold. It can save you so much time and worry. It's called, all deadlines in this agreement that fall on a weekend or federal holiday will be extended to 7 p.m. on the next business day. It saves you so much trouble when that appraisal deadline, when you were doing the contract, you were doing it so that everything fell on a Thursday or Friday or whatever. And then they didn't sign it for 3 days. And then suddenly your deadline's on a Sunday. And do you think you're going to be able to get hold of the appraiser on Sunday? Probably not. And you haven't been able to catch him on Friday and he didn't return calls on, you just don't have, not a whole lot gets done on the weekend unless you're lucky, with banks and, like that. A lot of lenders will pick up, will answer their phone, loan officers, but, the actual people that are processing the loans and stuff usually aren't available on weekends. Give yourself a little extra time, especially like, we had like in February, we had President's Day. So that was like basically a 3-day weekend. You think anything is going to get done at a bank on that Sunday or Monday? No, it's not. But you still got your deadline. But if you've got that clause in that contract, that buys you up to 3 days of extra time. So if you had a 5-day due diligence and that due diligence ended on Saturday, you've just bought yourself until Monday, which is great because then you've got all day, you can work on it on the weekend, and then you've also got all day Monday to address any issues that you need to deal with. So it just kind of a way to kind of buy yourself a little extra time if you need it.
Repeat that clause, please, Diane.
It's actually in GAR STIPS, but my watered down version is any deadline in this agreement falling on a weekend or federal holiday will be automatically extended until 7 p.m. the next business day. I mean, you could make it 11 o'clock, you could make it midnight or whatever, but I just do 7 o'clock because that seems to calm people down a little bit. But there's also a like I said, a GAR STIP. It's a little bit longer. It kind of goes into a lot of legalese, but this has worked very well for me for years.
Okay, kids, I'm gonna give you a big gift. I have an email I will send you, which I'd already sent my agents, that has this contingency deadline step. It has an appraisal step in which your buyer says, we're willing to pay the differential between what it appraises at and the sales price. I have 2 COVID steps. I have an escalation clause. I have a PDF that includes all the list of GAR forms and list of GAR special steps. And if you're really nice, I'll send it to you. Who wants this? Anybody? Okay. All right.
I do.
Please send it, Stacy.
First, I'm gonna send you my and we'll wrap up my link, my final test link, and then we'll wrap this up. So click. Okay, there goes that. And I included you, Olga, because I assumed you hadn't taken the test. And hold on. Somebody else here is doing, and Nicole, yes, because you're a makeup. And Brigitte, were you a makeup person? I can't remember. But anyway, okay, now I'm going to forward my, and so the email says, I recommend you create a folder on your desktop in which to save these attachments so you can copy and paste when writing contacts. So they're going to be about 8 attachments. And what I would do is download them one at a time. Otherwise it forms a zip file and that's just extra work. And then create a folder on your desktop, unless you have a better system, GAR forms and steps, maybe label it, and then zip all these to it. So anyway, let's take our final picture and then I'll wrap up. Brigitte, I need your face.
Hey, Stacy.
Yes,
Can
sir.
you put your phone number in the chat again?
Yeah, but it'll also be in my email signature on these emails I'm sending you.
And you too, Miss Diane, if you can.
Sure.
Thank
I will
you.
do it.
I like flowers. I'd rather have that than Starbucks gift cards or
Stacy, is there a practice test?
No, not that I'm aware of. But again, if you're really nice, I have some help aids for some of the questions on the test. I might put all those together and email them to you as well. And if most of them are 1 or 2 pages per power session. And if you don't see one for a power session, that means there aren't any questions on the test from that power session. And if you just read them one time, I promise you'll be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So thank you, Brigitte, for coming back to us.
And Stacy, I'll be sending you that Google Doc so that we can kind of see the format.
Okay, Akira, can you look up? Jeez. Okie dokie. Where did my thing go? I just want to make sure that it is. Why I closed this thing? Yes, you could say I spoon feed our agents, but I want you to win. I want you to succeed.
You're amazing, Stacy. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Sandra.
And thank you, Miss Diane.
You're so welcome.
Yes, please fill
I
out
was so
the
happy to be here today.
instructor evaluation that I know Jill has emailed you. Just give me.
I don't have the email from Jill.
Really? Okay, who was that?
Delana.
Oh, Delana. Okay. All right. I'll tell her.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. There we go. Okay. I got my picture. I think. Oh my goodness. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. Yes. I got my picture, so y'all can check out and check your email. Bye, April.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Leanne. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you, Stacy.
Delana, I'll tell Jill.